Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. We're back with another episode of On the Move. This is the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. We have a lot of show in store for you today. We've got a whole slew of topics that we're going to get to, plus some that I'm not even going to have time for. I've got about 5 hours of show, and I got to cram it into a 3-hour period. So I'm really excited about today's show because we have a guest that's coming on that I'm really looking forward to talking with. His name is Peter Owens. He's the president of the Crichton Prep Young Republicans and the host of the show Common Sense Conservative. He's going to be joining us in about 15 minutes. And I just recently discovered him, and I'm really looking forward to talking with him, especially about his take on what is common sense conservatism. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that. If you guys have anything you would like to join in, you'd like to say, anything on your mind, give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that number is 360-450-5625. Today's featured topics, I want to first start out talking about something that I didn't get a chance to get to last week, and it's about Russian aggression and some Saudi Arabian threats that are being levied. And I think this is really disturbing, and it's important that we point out. And then before we have Peter Owens give us a call, I want to talk a little bit about these Intel layoffs. There's about 12,000 employees that Intel is laying off, and I'd like to discuss this and actually break this down a little bit. Then, like I said, we're going to be having him, Peter Owens, on the show. We're going to talk politics. Basically, I like to find what I like to do when I talk with somebody for the first time about politics is I like to find the areas that we disagree. Not because I want to argue, but because there's no sense in us saying like, yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. We establish what we do agree with, and then we try to find the points of disagreement and work it out. We can either agree to disagree, or maybe we'll come together, or maybe we won't. Either way, I think there's a lot to be gained in that intellectual exercise of talking with somebody who you don't see eye to eye on. Sometimes they challenge your beliefs. They ask questions or make statements that make you think about the topic in a different way. And in addition to that, you can actually find some great friends out there. So, and I think it's fun. I think this is what I do enjoy the most about doing this show and communicating with you guys out there is that being challenged on my beliefs. I feel like this last, we've been doing this since 2013 here. So coming up on 3 years, I think, of doing the program here. We're at episode 116 of the show. I feel like I've kind of been in a hardcore school for politics and political thought, theory, philosophy. These are the kind of things that I feel like have helped me look at things dramatically different on some issues. I feel like I'm fire tested. Just like I think that you would think about the average conservative or libertarian living in a extremely leftist state, or city, for example, New York, or where I used to live, Portland, Oregon, extremely leftist. I actually lived in Vancouver, but it's just a stone's throw away, and very, very leftist. A lot of socialists over there. I believe Seattle has a socialist on their city council, if I'm remembering correctly. But either way, those people that have these conservative values, that hold true to these values, and they live in a place where they are disproportionately outnumbered from people who believe it's okay to just expand the government to any size whatsoever and use the government force against others for whatever end that they see fit, because like Saul Alinsky tactics dictate, the ends justify the means. It doesn't matter what you do as long as you get what you wanted in the end. So I think the people who live in these kind of areas, people that face this kind of stuff every day, you're fire tested. You are so conservative or so far in your beliefs that you have to defend it every single day, and you've gotten good at it. You know where you stand on these issues, and you know why, and you can hold your own in a debate. So I feel like that's what this show has done for me, and I hope that along the lines you guys have learned some stuff, and I hope you appreciate what I'm doing here. And for those of you who are not frequent listeners to the show, if this is your first time, we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at our website, the hub, OnTheMoveShow.com. You can get everything we do there. I got a blog there. We got a shop on there as well. You should check out our merchandise, by the way, in the shop. We got some awesome original design T-shirts that my wife made. She's an amazing graphic designer, by the way. If you need any graphic design services, if you're an activist, handing out literature, if you've done anything like printing off information about jury nullification and passing it out in front of courthouses or something like that, she can do that kind of stuff. She can give you business cards, logo designs, all that awesome stuff. But she made these T-shirts for the show, and we've got some really cool ones. We've got the Bear Arms limited edition T-shirt. It's a picture of a bear with the word arms on it. I think it's one of my favorite designs. But my favorite one out of all of them is the I Heart Open Carry T-shirt. And all of these are available on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link. You can also check out our blog. I post some writings that I've done in college, and just sometimes I'll have something stuck in my craw, and I post it on a blog. And feel free to check that content out as well. You can also, if you're don't want to listen on the website to the program, you can also get us on Spreaker, Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. I'd appreciate it if you follow us over there. The more people that follow us, the more people that will find us in search results, so you're helping get the message of the show out, spreading the message of liberty. And if you miss a show, you can also go on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow and get it on the archive. It's immediately available after the show, so you don't have to wait or anything. You can just go there and listen to what you missed on that show. Maybe missed the first hour or the whole show. You can check it out there. And don't forget to like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow or follow us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this Russian aggression conversation, because I think this is particularly important considering all of the economic stresses that we have that are going on, and what I believe is a countdown essentially to a collapse. So we are also in this process talking about potentially putting boots on the ground. We have Donald Trump, who's already said that, hey, he's heard top generals say that we should put 20 to 30,000 American boots on the ground in Syria. And we already saw what happened with Turkey shooting down a Russian plane, and now Russia is getting more provocative. They've been taking action that many find disturbing. So I want to play some audio of a situation that went down between Russia and some U.S. destroyers. So here's the audio. These jets are, I believe these are Su-24s, if I'm remembering correctly. They are flying really close and over top of very, very low, almost deck level of the destroyers, and basically, they're doing a flyby. They're buzzing the tower to steal a line from Top Gun. So, anyway, I'm going to play the clip. I think this speaks better than my words.
All right, look at the guy to port. Look at the left one. He is on the deck. On the deck, below the bridge wing.
So that was the noise of this jet flying by. And they did this over and over and over again. And this is an obvious attempt for them to get in the news, to show that they're not afraid of the United States, to push back a little bit. Russia, they really can't stand up against the United States military one-on-one in a straight-out fight, but they also know that we have our hands tied behind our back because we have a president who is very weak-willed and not willing to look strong on the world stage. Now, I'm not a warmonger. I'm not a neocon hawk or anything along those lines. I happen to believe that countries are responsible for their own situations. All right. So the only reasons why we should get involved is if it becomes a threat. And when it becomes a threat, that doesn't necessarily mean that we should move in and take extremely aggressive action. There's a lot of different things that we can do. In the case of Syria, I happen to believe that isolating the area and making sure that these people who are fleeing the country, especially the ones that are of Muslim descent, that are part of this culture, part of this country, it's their country, they should fight for it. They should be, if they disagree with what's going on in their country, they should take some initiative and actually stand up and fight for their country. I'll tell you right now, if there were people that were, saw people's heads off and and attacking my fellow countrymen simply because they had a difference of opinion, of religious belief, or something along those lines. I personally would want to fight for my country. That's I joined the military. That's the way I believe, and I think that taking a lot of refugees, thousands and thousands of refugees, and bringing them out of the country not only increases the threat of terrorism in these other countries that are taking the refugees. We're included in those countries that are doing that. It increases the risk of terrorism because we already know that ISIS has infiltrated out through these refugees. But in addition, you're leaving the country to these people. And I'm talking about the difference of an opinion of a tactical way that we handle these guys, a strategic way. How are we going to handle ISIS? Well, number one, I don't think you should start taking people in from this country, from this region. Period. Because the more people that leave, the less people that are there to fight this kind of society, that they want, that ISIS wants. But more importantly, we're talking about a disagreement between what the United States has been doing historically. We say we're not the world's police, but we kind of have been. And I disagree with this practice, but we kind of have been. If you look at the history of the Middle East, we've carved it up in a way and kept pressure in the area in a way to prevent this sectarian war that honestly needs to be had. They need to fight it out amongst each other. We've got the Sunnis and the Shia, and then we've got the religious interpretists, the ones who think that the Hadith and the Quran, that the literal interpretation is what you should live by. That's ISIS. So we need to let them fight it out. We aren't the world's police. They need to sort it out, and we need to contain that area. And if we can, let's develop good relationships with them. But I don't think that we should. I believe that we should be wary of foreign entanglements. That's just my opinion. So, before we cut to a commercial break here, I actually want to talk a little bit about this Intel layoff situation. I've been telling you about how bad the situation is out there for the economy. I probably don't have to tell you all. You all probably see it every day. You know that there's a lot of college graduate people who are holding bachelor's degrees that just cannot find a job for what they went to school for. And, a lot of it has to do with the regulation. A lot of it has to do with the amount of the size of government, the amount of taxes, all of the overhead that these corporations have to do. But in addition, we also are dealing with the fact that a lot of these major corporations are lobbying for the H-1B visa programs to bring in foreign workers. Intel is laying off 12,000 people after lobbying for more workers. So here's an article on the Daily Caller. Article is written by Blake Neff. He says, one of the top users of foreign workers imported via the H-1B visa program announced Tuesday it's laying off about 10% of its global workforce. Tech giant Intel is laying off some 12,000 workers, although it's one of the country's 15 largest users of H-1B visas, which are temporary visas that allow companies to hire foreign workers for American tech jobs. The big-time layoffs come even as the company has called for hikes in the number of foreign workers it is able to hire using H-1B visas. So keep this in mind, folks. What they're doing, and this is what Disney was doing as well, is advocating to get foreign workers to come in. They work here at their wages of their home country. So therefore, Americans cannot compete. We cannot compete against the slave wages that these people are willing to work for, and this is what happens. They lay off America. This program, the H-1B visa program, has been misused. It was only supposed to be used to fill in gaps where we didn't have Americans who would work that job. We didn't have enough people in that career, so we had to bring someone else in to fill those jobs. What they're doing now is they're laying off American citizens and replacing them with cheap foreign workers. I think this is despicable, but I think it's a sign of the times. I think that this is what happens when we have a government that is far overreaching what they're constitutionally obligated and allowed to do, and they're making it much more difficult for people out there just to get a job. And this is the byproduct. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Peter Owens, and I'm really excited about this. So you guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, gang, we're back, and at this point, we're going to be joined by Peter Owens. I'm really excited to talk to him. He's the host of Common Sense Conservatism. He's also the president of the Crichton Prep Young Republicans, and he's joining us now. Hey, Peter, are you there?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing really well, man. It's good to talk to you. So, first and foremost, let me give you an opportunity, because I love to give fellow conservatives or libertarians or people who are in the liberty movement doing the same thing, I love to give you guys as much attention as possible. So, before we get into anything, where can people find your show?
You can find me mostly on Twitter. It's at common_conserve, or my podcast is now featured on iTunes. If you search for either Peter Owens on the iTunes podcast store, or if you search for Common Sense Conservatism, it's also on Android on Pocket Casts app, which is a podcast apps that I use. Or if you just search for Common Sense Conservatism on Google, I'll be up on the search results page.
All right. So, you know, one of the things I love to see is younger people getting involved in this kind of stuff. And, you know, I got that a lot when I first got in. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? You sound young.
Yeah, I got that a lot, especially on Twitter. I'm actually just 15, but I took the reins of the Young Republicans Club at my high school, and I've been doing a lot of work with the Young Americans for Freedom, getting a chapter started at my school, as well as on multiple congressional and legislative campaigns in my state.
So 15 years old and you know, a lover of liberty. How long have you been doing this now?
I actually just started the podcast last week, but I've been doing some writing and my volunteer work as well as as being the president for about a year now.
That's awesome. So what got you into politics first and foremost?
Well, I grew up listening to talk radio ever since I was in about 7th and 8th grade in grade school. I listened to talk radio every night before I fell asleep. And that really got me interested and got me to actually explore my beliefs, which is the thing that a lot of people don't do today. I think a lot of people are just turn on the news, listen to Stephen Colbert, and laugh, oh, ha, 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 conservatives suck. I think that's what a lot of people don't do, is actually examine what they believe. So that's what I was able to do from a pretty young age. And I joined a speech and debate team and was able to really talk to people and get a grasp of what I believe.
Man, I'll tell you, you're going to blow up. I can already tell, because at 15, there's no way I could have articulated a sentence like you, man. So, and hell, honestly, I think you may even be more articulate than I am right now. So, but you know, 15 years old, I tip my hat to you, man. You're going to do some big things if you keep this up, man.
Thank you.
More power to you. So, I want to talk a little bit here about something we talked about briefly. I have an issue with the word common sense, with the phrase common sense, only because I feel like it's been co-opted by the left. And, you know, we hear all the time, common sense gun control, common sense that, common sense the other. And now Donald Trump, running for president of the United States, he's saying that he's a common sense conservative. Let me just ask you, what does common sense mean to you?
Well, I didn't know when I got the name. I didn't know that Donald Trump was using it, and if I'd known that at the time, I definitely would not, since I don't want to be associated with anything that Donald Trump is associated with. I'm part of the Never Trump crowd. I would go immediately to the Libertarian Party if he got the nomination. So after that, I think that common sense means that I'm willing to acknowledge that there are issues. I think a lot of conservatives on an issue like global warming or wealth inequality, they say, "Oh, that doesn't exist. You're just an idiot liberal." Well, what I do is I actually acknowledge the problem, and then I say why libertarianism and conservatism can fix their problem. That's where a lot of people go wrong. What I try to do through my action as a youth on campus is trying to convert people who are very early in their political leanings. So I try to get people to actually agree with me, not through just yelling at them, but through actually explaining the conservative position. So on an example, on an issue like global warming, people say that we need government control of the private sector. When someone says that about global warming and about how we need more government control, I'll say yes. I acknowledge there is a problem with pollution and in our environment. However, government control isn't the option that we should use. The private sector and the free market are already doing that. However, they are only being hindered by government regulations. Take a company like Tesla, for example. Out of their own free will and the will of the free market, they're creating green cars that use electricity and are some of the coolest cars on the market. However, they're being hampered by government regulation, especially at a state level, that only allows separate companies to own car dealerships as a way to restrict competition. That is why me, as a common sense conservative, I am in favor of less regulation, allowing companies in the free market to do their own will and to be able to fix problems that the free market will do in the end.
Well said, man. I really like that. So one of the things I'd actually like to mention too is that the government they have their own problems as well. It's not like they are the answer to all our woes. Let's even talk about pollution and the EPA and things along those lines. There was just a big spill, chemical spill or mining spill or something that went into a river in Colorado. I think it was about a year ago, something along those lines. And they released all of this stuff, turning the river orange and killing who knows how many wildlife there was in the area. And this was caused directly from the EPA. And this is supposed to be the organization that's designed to protect the environment. And we've already seen how the government will do things like with what's the name of that organization that's always trying to hassle ranchers? I can't remember what it's called now.
Greenpeace or
no. It's a government organization. It's a federal bureau. Now I can't remember. I'm brain farting it, but it's all right. Either way, they were killing these endangered turtles, and they were saying that we got to protect this land. We got to protect these turtles, and then suddenly they didn't have enough money to take care of the turtles allegedly, and so they literally started killing them. It's the exact opposite in many cases. If you are an environmentalist, I think that the free market has more tools out there that can actually mitigate these problems that we're concerned about. And even me, I'm a free market guy. I believe in industry. I'm a fan of business and of individuals, which is why I don't want the government involved. But I think that the free market just does these things better, and it's more subject to the will of people as far as markets, supply and demand, things along those lines. You mentioned Tesla, and I think that's a great example. So now let's spin this. Oh, go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, I remember reading that article about the EPA spill, and the most striking thing that I remember is that after the BP spill, everyone's saying, "Oh, it's the evil corporations that are ruining the environment," and there are protests and people writing on themselves that they hate the evil corporations. However, after the government makes a spill of a really big proportion, there was nothing. No one was getting mad at the government.
Exactly.
They were all saying that we just need more regulation in order to stop big evil corporations.
And that's one thing too. If you look at other similar spills, by the way, BP. I know a lot of people were angry at BP, and personally, myself, I actually didn't buy any gas at BP for a long time after that oil spill that they had, just because I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy that they just let this thing happen and it's pumping gallons and gallons of oil into the ocean. but that's a private company. The tool that we have there is to just not do business with them. If your government
and that's free market at work.
Exactly. If your government is the one responsible for it, what are you going to do? You just not pay taxes? Well, you're going to wind up in jail. That's your only choice. And by the way, the organization I was talking about was the Bureau of Land Management. So it's no wonder I forgot about them. They should be abolished. So, but let's actually talk.
Especially me. I'm from.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm from Nebraska. I'm from Nebraska here, and they're creating a lot of problems for people with their land, especially with the Keystone Pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
That's supposed to be going to be a great boost for our economy, create thousands of jobs. But them and Peru and protesters from out of state have been protesting it for a long time and stopping jobs from coming.
So let's actually talk for a second here about how the government has actually put roadblocks, impediments in the way of technological advance. This is one of my favorite arguments against the environmentalists is, all of the things that the government has done to stifle the economy, these regulations, the red tape, how much more difficult it is for a company to be started, and how many people just don't even try. And advancements in technology, again, the government gets involved in picking winners and losers. So they may subsidize one industry, like, for example, ethanol. If that was really something people wanted, then it would not need a subsidy from the federal government. Supply and demand would work, and if it was something people wanted, then they would have the money there. So one of my issues is that the amount of the size of government actually can stifle the technological advances, and I think we're entering into, if we haven't already arrived there, into a new dark ages, essentially, where instead of the church stifling technological advances as it did in the dark ages, where science was heresy, now the government is filling that void. It's the church of the state. The statists are worshiping at this altar, and it's really not making our lives any better or the environment any cleaner or less polluted. In fact, if it wasn't for these regulations, who knows what kind of technology we would have developed. We may not even be on fossil fuels anymore.
Yeah, I remember I was talking with some people because I made a promise on my show a while back that I'd respond to every single one of Bernie's tweets, since they said they sounded like they were written by a freshman who had just gotten out of philosophy class. And so there was one about global warming where I said the free market will, in the end, work itself out. And one of the people feeling the burn came and responded to me saying that, there's some documentary that shows that big corporations have been stifling little corporations or little startup companies who are trying to make a more green system. And so I engaged them and I asked them, well, do you have any examples? And they gave me an example of big car companies trying to buy patents off of small new startups and getting all the patents and then not using them. So I just came back and said, well, patents are a big government institution that I think have overstepped many of their boundaries, and so why should we have more government to combat more government? And then after that, they just didn't respond anymore.
You shut them down. There we go. So let's talk about this election here. You made your feelings known about Donald Trump, but I'm curious, what do you not like about Donald Trump that's preventing you from voting him? What puts you into that category of never Trump? By the way, I'm also never Trump. I can talk. I have a lot of friends who are listening to this show right now, actually, who are Donald Trump supporters. But personally, I can't vote for him. I won't vote for a progressive, and I think the evidence is clearly stacked in the favor that shows Donald Trump is not a conservative. So where do you stand on Donald Trump?
Well, Donald Trump is an authoritarian. I don't like authoritarians on either side of the aisle. There are some on the right wing and there are some on the left wing. However, Donald Trump makes it even worse by being a leftist authoritarian. Recently, I think it was just this Wednesday where it came out that Donald Trump said that we need to raise taxes on the rich, and Donald Trump was in favor of the left's view on the North Carolina bathroom laws. And all of his comments in the past, I read it out on my show, up until something like 2003, 2004, Donald Trump was a raging leftist. He said things like that he was very adamantly pro-choice. He thinks that women should have the right to kill a baby. And he's done a lot of different things on interviews that he's done since he wants to be a media personality. He said so many things that are so far left, and then he comes to the primary campaign and goes back on a lot of them. And now we see how he hired a new campaign manager. And that campaign manager recently said in the press release that the primary Donald Trump was all just an act. It was all a lie. And that's my biggest problem. That's what conservatives who are in the Never Trump spectrum suspected for the longest time, that the Donald Trump that was in the Republican primary was all just an act to get people to vote Republican. And now the only thing that people who are doing mental gymnastics in order to still support Trump and call themselves conservatives, I do not want the only thing that defines a conservative is to be a Southern racist or an authoritarian racist. I don't want people to define conservatism, or that's what leftists see many of his policies as. I'm not calling him that, but that's what leftists see his policies as. Yeah. I think there is more to conservatism, like being less government. Donald Trump is not less government. He wants to raise taxes through tariffs. He wants to, and that is why I cannot support someone who goes against fundamentally everything that I believe in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel the same way, especially, I think trade for me, this is what Donald Trump says his biggest distinction between the Republican establishment and himself is trade. And he's for protectionist policies like increasing tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, Japan, including a 45% tax on goods coming from these places. And that's not a tax on these companies. That's a tax on the American people. So, in fact, he's actually saying anybody who shops at places like Walmart, they're going to be paying 45% more for goods from these places. He's literally proposing one of the biggest tax increases we've ever had, and to me, I find that particularly disturbing. I think it's extremely anti-free market. He says he's for free trade, but fair trade. And again, these are the kind of distinctions that I feel that we get from a lot of progressives. Progressives say, I'm like Hillary. She says, I'm a progressive, but I'm a progressive who likes to get things done. And she goes in talking about how, she's going to compromise on certain areas, which, I find kind of funny. It's like, it's the difference between mostly free college and, totally free college, basically, is what she's saying. But with Donald Trump, he says he's a common sense conservative. He says he's going to make America great again, and he's going to do that through fair trade, basically, is where he goes with this. So, in fact, I actually want to see. I got some notifications here on Twitter. We got Daylight Dis on Twitter, at Daylight Dis. It's my good friend Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. He says, Ronald Reagan and Andrew Breitbart were both liberals. So was I. People evolve. Dan, I just want to say, first of all, I used to be a liberal. I was a young, dumb liberal. I didn't know anything about politics. And, back when I was a kid, and you know what? Tell me if I'm wrong about this, Peter. It was cool to be a Democrat. It was cool to be a modern liberal, not a classical liberal. But do you feel the same pressure being that you're 15, you're in high school or something? Do you feel like it's not as cool to be a conservative nowadays?
I totally agree with that, especially in the school and the education system here in America. I think that it's a lot easier to be a conservative or to be a liberal because you don't have professors, you don't have teachers constantly saying things that are detrimental to your views, saying things like you don't have conservative professors saying that all liberals are idiots. That's exactly what you have with liberal teachers saying that. And you don't have to, as a young liberal, you never have to actually defend your views. I would say that most Bernie Sanders supporters aren't actually in favor of of a lot of Bernie Sanders policies in the end if you actually explain them to them. So that's what I try to do. There are so many liberals in my school who just don't know what's going on. They just think, oh, free shit. I'm going to love that. Please put it right on my plate. But in the end, when you explain to them that someone has to pay for it, a lot of them fold because they can't actually defend their beliefs. And that's the hardest thing about being a conservative. It's really cool to be a liberal, and it's a lot harder to be conservative, but I'd rather go on the hard way. That's the right way.
Yeah. Honestly, I've never been afraid of walking the tough path. And, I'll say, I do it with a little bit of panache and style, and I walk it with a pimp limp, so get off my back, liberals. So what we're doing here, I want to actually focus here on what Dan was talking about. People evolve. And first of all, he mentioned Andrew Breitbart, which, by the way, Dan, if you're out there listening in listener land, I just want to say, Andrew Breitbart himself is on record saying that Trump was not a conservative. So if you are a conservative, and I don't want to call you out, Dan, but you're messaging me, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Feel free to call in if you want to get your voice out, bud. But I evolve when I grew up. And literally when I was a liberal, and you probably don't have this problem, Peter, because you grew up as a conservative. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, when I grew up, I didn't know anything about politics. I was exposed just a little bit to politics from my mom through talk radio. I used to listen to some talk radio growing up, but in my high school years and stuff, I didn't care about politics, and all I knew is that it was cool to be a Democrat. I didn't know why. I just knew all of my friends were. And as I started looking at the issues, I was like, you know what? I don't really agree with all of these things, so maybe I'm a moderate. And I thought I was a moderate for a real long time, and then I thought I was a Republican, and then I realized, no, I'm not that. I thought I was a moderate again. So, after a while, I realized I'm actually very, very close to a libertarian. The only thing I don't subscribe to in libertarian philosophy is the open border philosophy of allowing anyone and everyone to come across your border and get on welfare. I mean, obviously they're not for welfare, but as Milton Friedman said, a country cannot survive if they have both a open border policy and a welfare state. It's just a fact. So, I understand, Dan, he's saying that, people evolve. However, I don't even think Trump's policies have actually evolved that much. Even on his wealth tax, he said that he wouldn't do it now, but only because the debt's too big and it just wouldn't work. So, would you consider Trump still to be a progressive today, even on his current policies that he's saying now?
Yeah, I would, especially with things like free trade. He's not. I don't know if he's a progressive. He's definitely a populist. He goes with whatever people want him to say. And I think a lot of Trump supporters see his policy on immigration and say, oh, well, he's hard on immigration. He must be a conservative. Well, immigration is not the only issue. Things like raising taxes, things like being against NAFTA and the TPP. If you just told me those two things, I would think immediately, or before this election cycle, or I would think immediately of Bernie Sanders, a socialist. So if you give me the two of main Trump's big policies, I would immediately think of Bernie Sanders. Especially in one of the debates, he said, oh, he's in favor of the health care mandate. And then he went back on himself. Trump has said conservative things, but he's also said very liberal things. So take, for example, if you had a kid, and he'd been saying, oh, I really like chocolate for his entire life. But then one day he says two things. I don't like chocolate, and I like chocolate. I would be more inclined to believe the thing that is in line with history than the thing that isn't in line with his history.
Especially if he has a reason, like he has something to gain from not liking chocolate all of a sudden.
Yeah. So if one of his friends comes to him and says, I don't like chocolate, and if you don't like chocolate, you're not my friend, and he immediately said, oh, I don't like chocolate as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I would not believe him, and I would still think that he deep down likes chocolate inside, and when it's no longer beneficial to him, he's gonna start eating chocolate.
So Donald Trump is a 6-year-old kid with chocolate all over his face, and he's expecting you to trust him with your stash of chocolate because he told you he doesn't like chocolate now. That's
I don't like chocolate.
Yeah, you can't trust that. Hey, honestly, I've been suspicious about it just from his past views, but I feel like his current views are still very, very progressive. And that's where I'm not even just hashtag never Trump. I'm hashtag never progressive. That means I can't vote for Bernie. I can't vote for Hillary. I can't vote for John Kasich or Donald Trump. The only person in this race right now, other than a libertarian or other third party that I could even remotely consider voting for, is Ted Cruz. I wouldn't really call myself a supporter of Ted Cruz. I'm a supporter of some of his policy positions, a lot of them actually, but there's some things I disagree with him on. I just don't believe in hero worship. So, for me, I'm looking at this election with some concern, because if Donald Trump does win the nomination and Bernie or Hillary, it doesn't matter who he goes up against. First of all, I think he's going to lose. But second of all, this will be an election where there's literally no choice of anyone who is actually advocating for smaller government. Donald Trump, he's not advocating for small government. He's actually saying that the government is just not being run properly, and he's gonna do it better. And it has nothing to do with the size of it. So I'm curious, where do you stand on the other candidates? Who, if you could vote, who would you vote for?
Well, across the I agree most in the Libertarian Party. However, in the Republican field, I'd agree with you. The only one I could fathom voting for is Ted Cruz, because he is the closest to my beliefs. I disagree with him on some stuff, just like you, and I don't revere him like a lot of people do. However, I believe that he is the closest to my views inside of the Republican Party.
Yeah, and that's where I stand as well. You know, and there's some people that are put off because, first of all, I'm an agnostic. I'm not very religious at all. But, you know, some people are put off, especially in the Libertarian Party. I've seen there's a lot of people who really don't like Christians in the Libertarian Party. And I find this kind of interesting because, you know, I can understand if they feel like they're getting their religion pushed on them or whatever. But, you know, Ted Cruz, he advocates not for, like, for example, as a left-wing media would portray him as a homophobic, anti-gay candidate, especially in terms of where he stands on, you know, gay marriage. He thinks that it's an issue that is basically between a man and a woman. He thinks that that's what marriage is, but he doesn't think that because he believes that he should force somebody to not get married or something along those lines. He actually says it's a state issue. So, you know, for me, I can understand that. I think it is a state issue because it's not anywhere in the Constitution. Even and by the way, I actually don't think that marriage should have anything to do with the government because it's a religious ceremony, and there should not be any kind of involvement from the government in a religious ceremony. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm very, very religious. I'm a Catholic. I go to Mass a couple times each week. I'm very religious guy. But the funny thing is, we agree on a lot of issues. Because to me, it doesn't come down to what I believe. It comes down to what I think the government's purpose is. And I don't think the government's purpose is to get into your bedroom. I agree with you. I don't think that marriage should be instituted in a governmental institution. Marriage was originally put in as a governmental institution to make people more likely to procreate, and that was the sole reason to make marriage a governmental institution. However, now since that plan has failed and the procreation rate has gone down, I don't think we need government regulation of marriage. That's why I think they should leave altogether. And Dan just tweeted at us again. He said that both Heritage and the GOP supported the mandate, originally a conservative proposal. Mitt Romney implemented it. Well, the difference between Mitt Romney's proposal, Mitt Romney's implementation, and Barack Obama's implementation is that one did it on a federal level. I actually went off on Twitter today talking about this exact issue. The Constitution does not give any power to implement something to implement health care. And under the Constitution, they can't even be argued under interstate commerce, since liberal policies made health care that you can only do it inside of each state. You should know that, especially, Dan, because you're a Trump supporter. The lines around the streets. So the Constitution doesn't give the federal government the power to do the mandate, which is what Trump is doing, which he should know because the lines around the states. Mitt Romney, however, did it in his state because it was a state perfectly, and you could do it not on a one-size-fits-all solution, on a perfectly made solution for that individual state. Each state is different, and we shouldn't have a widespread mandate like Trump is fighting for. We should have a state-by-state mandate like Mitt Romney was fighting for.
So, you know, I disagree with any mandates whatsoever, but, you know, I agree with you. I think that is a state's issue. You know, states have every right to govern themselves however they'd like, and I think that it's a failed policy to force people to actually do something against their will. I disagree with coercing people.
Yeah, I agree.
But as far, you know, I just think, Dan, you're cracking me up here. You're using you're saying that it's a conservative proposal, and your example is Mitt Romney? Really? Like, that guy is not a conservative either, all right? And I try not to be, you know, a purist too much and stick my nose in the air, but this guy is a progressive as well. You know, this is why we keep losing elections. By the way, GOP, take notes here, because you put up a candidate that alienates the base, that makes people not really that interested in going out to vote, because at this point you're voting for a party or a person if they don't have your values. And this is what I like about Ted Cruz, because he's listening to Ronald Reagan, putting up the bold color banner saying, hey, I'm a conservative. My ideas are better. Let me explain why. I'm not going to water them down and compromise on these core issues. Yeah, we can come to some kind of agreement, like his ethanol proposal. He said he was going to stop all subsidies. It's Ted Cruz saying that he was going to cut all subsidies to ethanol and oil, all energy subsidies in Iowa is what he was talking about. And he then said, okay, you know what? I understand there's been a lot of people who've invested a lot of money and expect these subsidies, and it would be kind of pulling the rug out from under them, doing it all at once. So how about we phase it out over a 5-year period? You're not going back on your values. You're just compromising and slowing it down, but still you're getting to the same place. And that's, again, this is the difference between a conservative and a progressive. Romney, your very argument that it was a conservative proposal, Dan, is that Romney did it. Well, Romney is putting forth a mandate for health care. It's basically Obamacare in his state. And though, yes, it is a state's issue and they have every right to do that, I disagree with coercion. Do you agree with that, man?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I know he just tweeted, he said that we ran Romney as an alternative to Obamacare, and he asked, did you vote for the GOP? Well, Dan, at the time of that election, I was actually 11 years old, and I think it had been voter fraud for me to vote in that election. But now, I didn't support Mitt Romney fully in that election.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Is to answer Dan, I did vote for Romney. I did vote for McCain, but I did so begrudgingly. I wasn't excited about these guys. I knew that they were progressives, and for me, it was a vote of protest against the other guy. That's all it was. And we're being asked to do this again. Just get this guy in. We got to make sure that Hillary doesn't get in. And I just think, you're fooling yourself. First of all, out of the dozens and dozens and dozens of polls that have showed the national polling on Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, he's lost all but I think one of them. And yeah, the Trump supporters are going to say, oh yeah, he hasn't even begun on Hillary Clinton. He's going to turn that around. It's all going to happen. Okay, well, I think you're living in a fantasy land, but that's just me. That's my opinion. But all we have to do is look at what happened at this New York election here. Trump received about 400,000 votes in New York, his home state. And compare that to Hillary Clinton. She got about 1.2 million votes. I just don't think the whole argument is that Trump is going to expand the tent and bring Democrats in. I just don't think it's going to happen with numbers like this. And the fact that Donald Trump, he alienates a lot of these Democrats who are so far gone socialist. Again, this party is screaming to the left. They're hauling ass to the left right now, and half of the party almost is supporting an avowed socialist. So I just don't see it happening. What do you think? Oh, you still there?
I remember seeing something. Yeah. Sorry. I remember seeing something on that, like it said only 25% of Bernie Sanders supporters would never vote for Hillary in a general election, but something like 50% or like 40-some% of Republicans would never vote for Trump. So if you look at just those figures, I think that it shows a pretty bleak outlook for Trump's saying that he's going to get all the voters from the left side when they see how bad and ugly and corrupt Hillary is.
Yeah, and I've been hearing a lot of stuff about that as well. People saying that Bernie Sanders supporters aren't going to support Hillary because they just do not trust her. And I think that same, especially the Bernie supporters. I've had friends tell me, Dan is one of them. He's predicting that these Bernie Sanders supporters are going to be disenfranchised with the Democratic Party because Hillary Clinton's going to get the nomination, and you got the superdelegate situation. They're going to be complaining about stolen elections and all of that, similar to Donald Trump, how he's doing now, or at least how he was doing before he won New York. By the way, I think it's comical that you don't hear him say anything about how it's an unfair, rigged system when he got a disproportionate amount of delegates in New York. He won 60% of it, but yet he got over 90% of the delegates. It's okay when it favors him, but it's a stolen election when it doesn't. So, but I digress. It's not what I was really talking about. As far as the Bernie Sanders supporters, these guys are anti-billionaire. They are very, very pro redistribution of wealth, and they don't trust Donald. If you look at the polls as well, Bernie Sanders don't like Donald. If you listen to their words, Bernie Sanders do not like Donald Trump. They think he's a racist and a bigot. I think that's an insurmountable hurdle for the Donald Trump campaign. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And I don't see the Trump supporters' mental gymnastics say that they're going to go for one person who they agree with on almost everything, since Hillary has gone so far to the left in this election cycle. She's moved a lot farther left in order to woo the Bernie supporters, to someone who has said outrageous things. And Bernie supporters don't look at all the issues. They don't look at issue by issue. They look at what's in the news. And the news media has been destroying and smashing Donald Trump. That's a lot of holy outrage has used to popularity in the Republican Party. He said, "Oh, I hate the media. The media's the worst. They're going to smear me." So he says things to ensure that the media is going to smear him, so he can get people to vote for him as the anti-media candidate. But people on the Bernie Sanders side grew up listening to the media, and that's what has persuaded them to vote for Bernie Sanders in the first place. People like on Comedy Central, which is one of the most unfunny networks on television. I think MSNBC is funnier just because of their horrible policies. I would rather use Turks for humor than Comedy Central. However, I think that the people who Bernie Sanders supporters listen to the media 100% for news and anything out of the leftist mainstream media. And so I don't understand how Trump's going to shift his persona from being the conservative bad boy who's hated by the media to the progressive bad boy who says outrageous things that is hated by the media. I don't think that's going to happen. I think his pivot is not going to work, and I think he's going to lose support from both sides.
Yeah. And honestly, to my friends out there, listeners here, Mac, if you're a Donald Trump supporter and we disagree on that, no big deal. I think you're wrong. You probably think I'm wrong. So, it is what it is. You're entitled to your opinion. I just think you're going to get some buyer's remorse here after the nomination. I think it's, if Donald Trump gets a nomination, first of all, as you've mentioned, up to 65% of his own party is never Trump. Now, even if that number is inflated and people change their mind as they get closer and they see Hillary or Bernie and they start to panic, he's alienated the conservative base. For sure. He's alienated the conservative base. Now, you may think that you're a conservative and he hasn't alienated you, but okay. I'm not going to argue with you about what you think you are, but I just think that if you are a conservative and you're for free markets, and if you're a libertarian, especially, there's libertarians for Trump movements, and it's blowing my mind how anybody who claims to be free trade can support this guy. What these tariffs will do is destroy the economy. It's going to kill a bunch of jobs here in America. It's going to increase taxes. It's not going to go over well. And we have historical evidence of showing what these exact policies have done in the past, and it's not been good, gang. It has not worked out well when we've tried this kind of stuff. That's why Reagan said protectionism is destructionism. It's a self-inflicted wound that it does not work. So I disagree with that, and I think it's really concerning when we're potentially heading into an election again for a third time with a progressive versus a progressive light if Donald Trump wins a nomination. But that's a big if. So have you been following as far as real closely? Do you think that there's going to be a contested election?
I would definitely hope that there's going to be a contested convention. And I have been following it somewhat, and the chances of it have gone down since New York. However, I think 538 is one of the best websites on the internet to get unbiased news, or only a little bit biased news. And they said for Donald Trump to get to for him to get to 1237, he'd have to get something, I'm pulling it up right now, but he had to get something like 93 delegates, or he'd have to get every single delegate. However, Kasich pulled a couple off the top. So I think that the perfect route for him to get all the delegates that he needs is not going to materialize. And I'm going to be at the Republican convention here in Nebraska in just about 2 weeks. I'm going to be reporting from there to show how Cruz actually gets all the delegates that he does from these conventions. I'm going to be interviewing them and ask them where they're going to be going on their Cruz paid vacations that Trump claims that he gives out without any sort of proof, any sort of substantiation to those claims. So I'm going to be asking them if I can go along to their vacations. But I hope there's going to be a contested convention, and I think a lot of it will come down to California. It's a lot closer race in California than it is in places like New York. Mm-hmm. New York, one of the big things, no one made a big deal about Cruz winning his entire home state of Texas. No one made a big deal about Kasich winning his home state of Ohio. They said, we're going to do that. When Kasich won Ohio, Peter made jokes that, Kasich's not running for president of Ohio. Well, Trump's not running for president of New York. So that's why I think that people say, Trump won New York, he's the only candidate left. I think that's first, you're not looking at all the facts. Trump is one of the least qualified candidates and one of the weakest candidates that's ever gone through the Republican Party in recent history. And I think that there will be a contested convention in Cleveland.
Well, to be fair, I will say, because Donald Trump has won other states, so he's obviously not just won New York. He's the front runner right now. He's winning in the delegate count. But as far as the ground game is concerned, this is one of the things that I think people are misunderstanding. First of all, the delegates are who wins or who picks the nominee. That's what it is. The voters, depending on the states, you may have a bound vote. You may have a place where you're not bound to vote. But let's look for example at California. California is not a winner-take-all state. It's broken up into the districts. So Ted Cruz can focus in some of these areas that may not necessarily be favorable to Trump. He can focus on those districts and pull off some of these delegates. That way, it's a lot easier than trying to go after the whole state. You can go after a piece of the pie, little by little, like that. And I think Ted Cruz, with the ground game that he has, and by ground game, first of all, he's got supporters that he's been mobilizing. He's actually utilizing his social media effectively. One of the things that Barack Obama, his campaign was discussed about is that he was one of the first people to really utilize social media. But Donald Trump, what he's done, instead of getting people on the ground, knocking on doors, things along those lines, up until this point, he has relied solely on his Twitter and free media attention. It's up to $2 billion in free advertising. It's probably way more than that, and it'll be way more by the end of it. So I agree, he is a populist candidate, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that he's getting this free media, but he's failed to establish a ground game like Ted Cruz has. Ted got his guys elected as delegates, and in some of these places they're bound to vote for Donald Trump in the first vote. But if it goes to a second vote, I honestly believe that if we have a contested convention and it goes to the second vote, Ted Cruz comes out with the nomination. What do you think?
I think that is the real possibility. I said in my latest podcast that I think if Trump gets over 12,000 delegates, 1,200 delegates, then I think he will be able to sway enough establishment voters who are afraid of establishment delegates who are afraid of Trump or afraid of Cruz that I think he would come over to Trump. But if he gets under 1,200, I think that he won't be able to get enough delegates to come to him. And yes, I think Cruz in the end will win, because I said this in my first podcast as well, that I think ground game and grassroots support is what wins elections in the end. Republicans, especially with the establishment, have been going off a couple things we tried in elections. They've been going off robocalls and widespread media campaigns, since those things are very easy to buy with money. since there hasn't been that much really, really, really good grassroots support for the establishment candidates that they've put up in the past, they've had to spend a lot of money in order to get robocalls and ad campaigns in order to try and push them. However, robocalls and ad campaigns can't look at the issues perfectly. They can't go to someone and talk about the problems that they've been facing in their life and then tell them and then say why the free market and why the conservatism and libertarianism is the best option. All these can do is either smother the person on the left with mudslinging or have really inspirational pro-America stuff that can alienate some people. So I think that the Trump's method of going around it through the media is not the right way. I think the Cruz method of grassroots campaigning that got Obama the White House is the way that in the end we can take back the White House.
I agree. We're going to have to cut to a commercial break. Would you mind sticking with us through the break?
Yeah, sure. That'd be awesome.
All righty. We'll be back with Peter Owens. We're going to talk more about Trump, Cruz, politics, a potential contested convention, and we're going to take some of the stuff that you guys have said on Twitter. If you're listening on the 405media.com, we only broadcast the first hour over there, so please feel free to check us out for the rest of the show at OnTheMoveShow.com or Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. And thanks so much for listening over there, guys. I really appreciate the 405media.com. You guys should check them out. They're doing great things. So anyway, we'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LADOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. I just want to say thanks for listening to the show here, gang. If you're sticking around, if you're just joining us, we've been talking with Peter Owens. He's the president of the Crichton Prep Young Republicans and the host of the show, Common Sense Conservatism. Conservatism. That's a hard word to say. Anyway, hey, Peter, you still there? You still there, Peter?
What are we going to talk about now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We got a lot of stuff out here. So first of all, I have to touch on what Dan's saying on Twitter here. That's at DaylightDis on Twitter. First of all, Dan is accusing me of only being GOP so long as we choose my guy, my candidate. I want to have my cake and eat it too, apparently. And he said that never Trump should be never Hillary. So first, Dan, I will say you've got some parts of this absolutely correct, and you've got some parts of this absolutely wrong. So first of all, never Trump should be never Hillary. Completely agree. I am never Trump, never Hillary, never Kasich, never progressive. So I'm done playing this game of, just vote for the guy simply because he has a certain label on him. I'm voting for values. So yes, I am only GOP so long as we choose my values. Not my guy. I could give a crap who the guy is. It could be anyone as long as they're a conservative saying conservative values, or even a libertarian, even better in my opinion, saying focusing on the Constitution. Those are the things that I care about. Free markets, freedom, period, individual responsibility, and stopping the redistribution of wealth. Those are things that I have a major problem with, and the fact of the hugeness of our government, how big the government has gotten in the regulation in the free market. Huge. Yeah. So this is my problem. Yeah, I want to have my cake and eat it too. I want to vote for somebody who shares my values, and I want them to get elected. And I'm tired of voting for people who don't have my values, like Romney, like McCain, like Donald Trump. I'm not gonna do it anymore. I'm done. Where are you at, Peter?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. One of my problems is I'm really confused when once conservatives kind of all rallied around Cruz and he started to gain in the polls, people started accusing Cruz of being an establishment guy. And I think the difference between that, they see establishment as a method of who supports you. I see establishment as a litmus test of what your values are. Cruz hasn't changed his values since he got support from people like Jeb Bush. That some people said when that endorsement came out, it would hurt Cruz a lot. Well, I think that the definition of establishment is not being a true conservative. I don't think it's judging by who your support comes from. That's why I'm never Trump. That's why I would never support Kasich either, because I think that I called him Cajun Kasich. I said he's caved on a lot of the moral issues, or moral issues by leftists. People on the left say, if you think government stop global warming, then you're a bad person. If you don't think that people shouldn't be forced to make a wedding cake for a gay couple, then you're a bad person. And that's where Kasich has caved when he's tried to appeal to the establishment base of people who aren't really conservatives, who aren't really libertarians. They don't want smaller government. They just want their big government. I don't support people who just want big government with their guy in charge.
Yep.
That goes to people like Trump, who says, I want big government with Trump in charge because he's going to shake things up. I'd rather have small government with a person I just agree with in charge. That's why, for example, someone like Austin Peterson, he is very socially liberal. I, for myself, am very socially conservative. However, libertarianism presents it where you don't have to share some of the social values. You just have to share governmental principles with the person. I think government should be so small that it shouldn't matter the personal viewpoints of them. I think it just matters the governmental viewpoints of them.
And I completely agree with that. Which is why, with Ted Cruz being as religious as he is and me not being religious, I don't have to agree with him that marriage is between a man and a woman. I personally, I don't care if two consenting adults want to get married, want to do anything, as long as they're not hurting anyone. I don't care what they do. And as far as finding a church that will marry them, I don't think that they should be able to force a church to marry them against their will. If they can find some place to get married, then that's great. If they want to just have a ceremony on their own, again, I don't think that the government should be involved in this process at all. So, for me, it's completely okay to disagree with somebody on their social values, but I absolutely agree. If you are not advocating for smaller government, a smaller impact on your life, then I just can't vote for you as a candidate. And I vote values. That's what I'm doing. So. Sorry, Trump supporters out there. I just cannot vote for a guy who does not share my values and is actively calling for bigger, more ominous government involved in every aspect of your life. Again, he's for universal health care. He's for expanding background checks, extending waiting periods for firearms. He was for an assault weapons ban, and he's the most anti-free trade candidate we've had in a long time. So I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. So go ahead.
Yeah. So what Dan had said earlier was that some people, a lot of candidates, like Reagan used to be liberal when he was younger. He did used to become a liberal. However, he could pinpoint a time when he realized that liberalism was not for him, and you could do the same as well. And most people who transition, from liberal to conservative could tell a story about why they did so. But Trump can't do that. People have asked him, when did you change? When did you become pro-life? It was asked that in a debate. The only thing he said was, oh, I knew a woman once. I knew a woman who was going to abort her baby, then she didn't, and then he was a really great kid. But Donald Trump, he never really could offer a clear story about when and why he changed his position on a lot of these fundamental conservative principles. And they happened really quickly. So I think it had to be something like a lightning strike that got Trump to change. And I don't know if it erased his memory or whatever, but now his conservatism seems to be wearing off.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. As we get closer and closer to the general, he's trying to make that pivot. As you said, as a populist, he's trying to now appeal more to the middle or even the left. As he said, he's trying to expand the tent. I don't want to be part of that. And again, I'm only part of the GOP because they represented the party of small government. That's what they were supposed to be. And if they're leaving those values behind, they're leaving me behind with those values. So I imagine that a large part of the GOP will not show up to vote or vote for third party. I'm actually really interested in the outcome of a contested convention. What will happen? For example, if Ted Cruz gets a nomination in the second or 30th vote or however many votes there are, if Ted Cruz gets a nomination, do we really believe that the Donald Trump supporters will be extremely disenfranchised and not vote for the Republican in this race, maybe vote for Hillary or abstain from voting altogether? What do you think? Are we in jeopardy of seeing the fracture of the GOP if Ted Cruz wins a nomination?
I think that's definitely a possibility, though I said before that I'd rather have Cruz win the contested convention than lose the general election than Trump win them both. Because I think if Trump wins the nomination, I think he will tarnish the reputation of the Republican Party and lose even more people and lose a lot of liberals from coming to the Republican Party. Yep. Because I think that the Republican Party used to be the party of true values and things that they could stand for and truth. However, if Donald Trump wins, he's going to hijack the movement, and I don't know if the Republican Party can recover from someone hijacking the movement. Yeah. However, if we were to continue and nominate Cruz, even if we were to lose this election, I think that we would not lose the conservative movement. So when we have to ask ourselves, which is more important, getting Trump in the White House this specific election cycle and stopping Hillary, or preserving the Republican movement? I think it would be better to retain the conservative movement rather than lose the entire and lose this election cycle.
Agreed. One of the things I think is going to happen, if for example, Ted Cruz doesn't get the nomination, if Donald Trump gets it, if he somehow gets the 1237 that's required of delegates to vote for him, if that actually does happen, and I honestly believe that Donald Trump cannot win in a general. He's got more negatives than any other candidate we've ever had. He's alienated women. He's alienated Hispanics. If you look at his numbers, they're terrible. And then in comparison to Hillary Clinton, he loses every stinking poll almost when compared to her in a national poll. So I just don't think that he will win. You'll see the Never Trump movement just stay home or vote third party. I think there's a real shot that a third party could actually have a fair shot in this election, which is kind of exciting. I mean, I almost want to see Donald Trump get the nomination just to see what happens with the third party movement here, because I know that the GOP itself will start to fracture at that point. And if people are like me, I will never vote for Donald Trump. You said you'll never vote for Donald Trump. I mean, I know you're 15, but if you could vote, you wouldn't. And there's many people around the country, even if it's not the 65% that's been reported that will never vote for Donald Trump. Even if that's 30%, you just can't win without the conservative base as a Republican, and the conservatives are protesting this guy.
Yeah, and I think what's going to be interesting is to watch here the Libertarian primary is going to be really interesting, because what I've seen in various articles is that people are voting non-pragmatism and Austin.
Oh, you still there, man? Did we lose you?
I agree with more Austin Peterson and Gary Johnson. I said I agree with Austin Peterson on the most out of any candidate currently running. However, I agree with Gary Johnson on a lot. And Gary Johnson has much better name recognition, but Austin Peterson I agree with more. So I think it's really interesting to see, because various polls have come out, one even showing that Gary Johnson had the 15% that allowed him to be viable for the general election debate stage. So I think the most interesting thing that we're going to see this election is if money from the conservative movement will shift to the Libertarian primary to allow them to get their message out and to allow them to maybe have a chance at getting on the debate stage.
I see. Yeah, you know, one of the things I don't like about Gary Johnson, and I like more with Austin Peterson, is Gary Johnson's stance on, for example, the cake makers that were told that they had to bake a cake for a homosexual wedding. Gary Johnson's actually in support of laws that will prevent private companies from discriminating against homosexuals. I think this is not a libertarian value. It really is confusing to me, because this is a law, and you know, law is force. Libertarians are anti-coercion and free market. I think personally people should be able to discriminate against whoever they want, whenever they want, for whatever reason. You don't have a right to somebody's goods or services. You don't have a right to their time. You know the free market can settle this. You know, if people disagree with it, then they can protest that establishment. If people agree with it, then they can support it. But either way, it's not a very smart business policy in the first place to actually cut out a segment of the population that could patronize your business. It's just pretty foolish, along with the controversy that comes with that. So, I'm a little bit concerned with Gary Johnson's social justice warrior side. I didn't know about it up until recently, and I've just discovered that he's for that. I'm looking at Austin Peterson now, and he doesn't have the name recognition of Gary Johnson. I still think Gary Johnson is a viable candidate, but I strongly disagree with him on that one issue, and it's concerning to me because it feels like he's going against the non-aggression principle, which is what the Libertarian Party is supposed to stand for. One of the things I actually want to get to here, because you commented on about Ted Cruz being called an establishment guy. It's really blown me away, because he's been the most anti-establishment on record. First of all, fought his own party even before he was in Congress. He went up against George W. Bush in a states' right issue. So fighting against his own party, he's got documented history of fighting his own party as far as with the Obamacare government shutdown, Harry Reid government shutdown, and the list goes on. There's a lot of different things, but in addition to that, we have people like Lindsey Graham, who is arguably very entrenched in the establishment, talking about how they could murder Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate and they couldn't get a conviction. Here's a clip. Actually, we'll go ahead and play it.
You've come a long way in 72 years. 72 years ago, a woman could not be part of the American experience. If you don't vote, that's coming back in 2017. If I were you, I would vote. But look how far you've come. The most dishonest person in America is a woman. Who's about to be president. How could that be? My party has gone bat crazy. A good Republican would defend Ted Cruz after tonight. That ain't happening. If you killed Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate, and the trial was in the Senate, nobody can convict you.
Ha ha ha! Yeah, let's murder someone on the floor of the Senate. No one will convict you. So he's very, very establishment. And by the way, the establishment is now in some ways lining up behind Ted Cruz because he's a known quantity. We know what Ted Cruz is going to do. He's going to follow the Constitution. He's going to shrink the size of government. And Ted Cruz is a known quantity. Donald Trump, not so much. We don't really know what he's going to do. That's why Lindsey Graham has begrudgingly endorsed Ted Cruz, which is hilarious after joking about murdering him, just yucking it up. The establishment has. If we talk about mobilizing or bringing together different people inside the GOP, all these different ideologies, all these different people. Donald Trump says he's going to expand the tent. Well, Ted Cruz has truly done that. He's brought in the grassroots. He's brought in conservatives. He's brought in libertarians like myself. He's bringing in the establishment because he's got votes or supports endorsements by Lindsey Graham and Jeb Bush. There's a big cross section of people in the GOP that are backing Ted Cruz against Donald Trump. And I think honestly, the election, the current delegate count would be massively different. We did an episode not too long ago on the show showing the math of what happened with Marco Rubio in the race, how that affected the delegate count in favor for Donald Trump, because he started winning some winner-take-all states and got disproportionate delegates taken from that would have went to Ted Cruz if Rubio wasn't in the race. So I think this election would have been completely different if we didn't start from a 17 person field. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And coming into this election cycle, I was really excited because I thought we had so many good people that could carry the banner of the conservative movement. People like Carly Fiorina, people like Marco Rubio. I thought they were really good choices. However, so many of them stayed in so late, even though.
Yep.
And when people were arguing that it was time for either Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz, one of them to come together and say, "I'll become president, and you can be my running mate, and together we can defeat Trump." That never happened. I think if that would have happened a month earlier, I think that we wouldn't be in the position we are today. That's why I think it is best for people to, for someone who doesn't want the job to be president of the United States, I think it would be best for someone who didn't want the job to run. Because when people really, really, really want the job, I think when people really want the job and their ego gets in the way of their love for the American people, that's where we find people like Donald Trump, who have sneaked past the fray, who have gotten people really riled up through the media, where the other candidates are fighting among themselves, why they are the guy, while they're the only person, while the American people just want someone who agrees with them. So when these candidates are fighting among themselves, they can't decide which one of them should carry the banter. Someone steals it from their hands and extinguishes the light of the conservative movement.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about what would happen underneath the Donald Trump if he somehow managed to win the general, which I absolutely, I just don't think that he has a real shot at actually winning the nomination. So in my opinion, and what I've been saying this whole primary, is that a vote for Donald Trump in the primary is a vote for Hillary Clinton in the general, because ultimately, you're putting up the least electable guy that doesn't even support the values of the Republican Party and hasn't even been a Republican that long. He's actually been a Democrat a hell of a lot longer than he's been a Republican. So this guy, very divisive, has a whole movement of Never Trump, and it's because of his values. It's because he has New York progressive values, and that's what Ted Cruz was talking about, as New York values. He wasn't belittling the city. He wasn't even belittling the state. He was saying that there are deeply entrenched progressive New York values. Hell, they have Bill de Blasio, a socialist over there, running the city of New York. I mean, it's very simple. It's a very simple concept. And Donald Trump he doesn't represent a party of small government. He doesn't represent conservative values. He represents what he would probably say, middle of the road conservatism, common sense conservatism. It's lukewarm. You know, it's you compromise on your core principles. You are not hot, you are not cold, and therefore you're not going to get any steam. People are not going to back this guy. So Donald Trump, he loses the general, but I think even if he gets a nomination, I think the Republican Party is still going to be there unless it fractures and another party arises and soaks up those conservatives that have been disenfranchised from Donald Trump and actually makes a real play. It would be interesting to see. I just, I would love to watch that. However, I would be very upset at the state of the country because the outcome probably won't be a small government candidate getting elected. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there are enough conservatives who are not happy with the state of Donald Trump, the state of the current Republican Party, that I think enough of them could materialize for 15% support of a Libertarian candidate. If that will happen, that's going to be something interesting to see. And like you, I'd be excited to see it as political theory. I think it'd be a really good book to read, a really good movie to watch. However, it's playing out right in front of us. So I'm scared of what the country's going to look like after this disaster of an election cycle. However, it's going to be a hell of a show to watch.
Yeah, we'll watch it go down in flames, that's for sure. So you were saying that you're scared of what the country is going to look like. And this is actually one of the things, since Obama has been elected, my generation, I don't know if you are you considered a millennial at 15 years old?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, my generation was supposed to be the first generation to be colorblind. We weren't supposed to see color. And since Obama has been in office these last 7-8 years now, he's I think that the dynamic of that has severely changed. We now have racial politics going on to a level that I've never seen in my lifetime. It seems like there's so much racial politics going on, and in other areas as well. We have changed so much. So there's a meme that was sent out on Facebook to me from my friend Sam Whitfield. He has the I think his show is called the Whitfield Report or something, the Whitfield Analysis or something like that. He's got some pretty good and interesting points of view. But he says he posted this meme. It says 7 years of Obama, and now no one knows which bathroom to use. And we're talking about that transgender bathroom controversy about what bathroom that transgenders can use. So my point on this is my personal philosophy. And then I'll get to where I think it should be, it ought to be. I think it's a simple question of, do you have the ability to stand up to pee? If you do, then you belong in the men's bathroom because there's urinals there, and they're there for a reason, because you're supposed to pee standing up if you're using those. But honestly, I honestly just think that this is a state's issue, and it shouldn't. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says the federal government can dictate what bathroom you use. So I think this is absolutely a state's issue. But more importantly, if we're talking about a public space, or actually a private space, I think that's up to the business owner to decide. And I don't think that they should be pressured by any government, forced to do something against their will. Where do you stand on this one?
I agree with you a lot. Austin Peterson said today that he said it was yesterday in a live show that he had. I was listening to. He said that both sides in North Carolina are wrong. There's a state that needs a lot of libertarian. He wants to use one bathroom, and the Democratic side wants to force business owners to accept people's bathroom. What I think is the libertarian stance is that the private business owner can make their own decisions for their own private land and their own private business. And that's what, in the end, will make people happy, because the free market will, in the end, decide. But I think that the Democrat side is too quick, that if you see someone creeping in the woman's bathroom and you kick them out, you could be tried for a hate crime or tried for discrimination. Yeah. I think that's horrible. But if on the Republican side, if a business owner wants to be what they call inclusive, and that would be illegal, and I think that's bad. So I think both, and I don't think there's been a real. I think now after this debate, there's a real libertarian understanding of what the actual issue is there.
Yeah. I think honestly, it's just a better solution to let people decide on their own using the free market, as you said. If an individual in business who owns a business decides that they want to just have one bathroom that's unisex, or all their bathrooms are unisex, or whatever you identify with, you can go in. Personally, if I had a daughter, I don't have any children, but if I had a daughter and I was at an establishment that I knew had bathrooms that were intersex, that were co-ed bathrooms, I would probably have an issue with that, and I probably wouldn't let my daughter use that bathroom just because you never know. I mean, first of all, you never know what kind of sick person is going to exploit these kind of laws. This is one of the things that the left, they always say, if this law just saves one person, well, what if this law causes one person to get molested or one little girl or boy to be in a situation that they ought not be in? I think that's a disturbing thing, and I think it's also disturbing that it's being forced upon as a whole if we're talking about the federal government deciding to mandate this. Now, if a state decides to do that, I disagree with it. But if it's in their constitution that gives them the right to impose their will on businesses, I don't think they have that right. I think that's an individual right as a business owner. But for example, in a public space, what do you think in like public property, things that are owned by the state? What should the law be for that?
I personally think that it's whatever junk you got down there. I think the bathrooms shouldn't be for genders, they should be for sexes on a federal scale, or on a public property, because the bathrooms weren't made for how you feel, they're made for how you function.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. The design of the bathroom is very important. If it has a urinal, it's meant for guys with pee-pees. Sorry to use my vulgar tongue there, pee-pees. Yeah, but that's the way I feel about it. And honestly, I don't think it's discriminatory, especially, if we're talking about sexes. Now, this is one of the things that the left would like to do is they say, well, they identify with this or that. And, okay, you may identify with that, but you're still, especially, most of the transgenders out there, they don't actually even have the sex change. So, you're still packing, and, you may identify with a woman, but you still have man parts, which makes you still a man. And even if you did have the sex change, now look, if you look like a woman, I don't have any problem with you going into the woman's bathroom because no one's going to know. Who's going to know, really? But if I just don't like the whole fact that they want you to participate in this lie. That they want, for example, Caitlyn Jenner, is that the Kardashian dad, right? That's the guy?
Yeah.
Okay. Caitlyn Jenner. I have a problem with people wanting me to use the pronoun her or she when referring to Caitlyn Jenner. Look, if Caitlyn Jenner wants to refer to herself or himself, whatever, as a she or a her, that's fine. She or he has every right to do that. But for me, I feel like I'm being a little dishonest. I feel like I'm being forced and pressured to participate in a lie, something that both Caitlyn Jenner knows to be a lie and that I know to be a lie. Caitlyn Jenner's not a woman, and I'm sorry, you can't change your DNA. There's a reason why we have a Y chromosome, X chromosome. You can't change your DNA, and you're born a certain gender. You may identify with something, but I disagree with the fact of having to participate in that lie. It makes me feel dirty. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like biologically, and the science points out that yes, they are a male. That Caitlyn Jenner is a male. However, if she wants to continue with that, then who am I to say? I think that's something that should be left up to our mental health doctor. But let's see. Dan just tweeted at us. He said, I had a West Point educated girlfriend who could pee standing up. Which bathroom should be used? What she should use? First of all, I'll say that's very impressive, and second of all, I'll say that I don't care. I honestly don't care which bathroom she should use. I just want to respect a private business owner's right to be able to kick out a creeper from their bathroom without being charged with a hate crime.
Exactly.
We had an example up in Canada. I think it was about a year ago, where Canada passed a nationwide law that says you can't discriminate anywhere based on sexual orientation or gender identity. So this pervert went into a women's homeless shelter and proceeded to rape and hurt a lot of women, since he said he was a woman, so he got into a private place. And that was very bad, because on a federal level, there's a law requiring them, if they turned him away or kicked him out, they could be branded as a hate group. They could be branded as hurting his feelings, and that's a crime in Canada. And that's what I want to avoid in the United States. I don't want someone's feelings to be a crime.
Yeah, and I agree. And to answer Dan's question, which bathroom should he use, or she use, sorry, if your girlfriend can stand up, it's up to the establishment. Honestly, if it's a private establishment, I think it should be left to the business owner. And if the business owner wants to have co-ed bathrooms, that's on them. If they don't, then you need to respect the property rights of that individual. And by the way, Dan, you're also texted here. You said, yes, we know what Ted Cruz is going to do. He's going to shrink government like he has the last 4 years. Oh, wait. Then he also went in to say that Ted Cruz, a real, quote, man of the people. He's a Harvard lawyer, and I think he's talking about his wife, Heidi, managing director at Goldman Sachs. I roll. So, look, I don't want to go back and forth here, but I have to comment. If you're talking about a man of the people, as a Donald Trump supporter, look, Ted Cruz had to have a job to pay for his student loans to go through that. He actually was working while going to school. In addition to the fact that if you're comparing apples and oranges here, Donald Trump, a billionaire who is not a man of the people. In fact, he's tried to use a coercive force of government to steal an old woman's property using eminent domain. Let's not talk about man of the people. This guy is flying around in private jets. I don't have any issue with that, but let's not act like he's in touch with the everyday Americans. I think if we're going to do a comparison, Ted Cruz is much closer in that regard. But I digress. Anyway, so we're about ready to wrap up this segment with you, man. First of all, I'm thankful to have talked to you because you've given me a lot of hope for the future. I love the fact that you're 15. I had no idea how young you were, man. I thought you were maybe like, in your 20s or something. I listened to your first episode of your podcast, and I had no idea you were 15 years old. You just blew my mind. So Peter Owens, president of the Crichton Prep Young Republicans and host of Common Sense Conservatism. Where can people find your show, man?
You can find me on iTunes. You can search for Peter Owens, or you can search for Common Sense Conservatism, or on Twitter, where I'm tweeting out multiple times a day about things. I'm tweeting out all my episodes. All the links are in my bio there. That's at Common Conserve on Twitter, at COMMON_CONSERV. That's Conservative Podcast on Twitter. Or if you Google Peter Owens on YouTube, I post a lot of my interviews there. Or if you just put Common Sense Conservatism Peter Owens or Peter Owens' podcast into Google, it should bring up my face.
All right, man. And we're going to do a bit where I'm on your show as well. Is that right?
Yes, sir. You're going to... All right, I'll send you the details in a little bit.
Yeah. We'll work it out. We'll work out when. And MacPack, stay tuned for that because I like I said, I'm really looking forward to introducing my audience to you. I think it's pretty awesome that what you got going on, man. You got a big future in front of you, man. And I hope you keep it up. So, first and foremost, thanks for joining us. I had an awesome time talking with you, and I hope you'll come back again.
Yeah, it'd be an honor.
All right, man. Well, we're going to cut to a commercial break. Again, thanks so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All righty.
Bye.
Take it easy. All right, gang. We're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to be moving on to the feature topics here. We've got quite a lot of stuff that we want to get to here. First of all, I want to get inside the mind of a Bernie Sanders supporter and get lost around in there for a while. We'll just wander in the mind of a Bernie Sanders supporter. In addition, this episode is titled, again, this is episode 116 of our program. This is titled The Game of Thrones. And in the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. And we're going to talk about that in honor of the fact that Game of Thrones is actually coming back tonight. I don't know if you guys are a watcher of the Game of Thrones television series, but I am. My wife and I, we love that show. And I actually want to focus on government, because this is the Game of Thrones that we're playing here. Governments are instituted among men, and these are control mechanisms. Essentially, that's all governments are, and the people in the top have the power. And right now, there are people inside of our government that are vying for this power. And this is the Game of Thrones. We're going to talk about that. In addition, I want to talk about how Donald Trump thinks that America is a democracy and why he's wrong. In addition, I want to talk about how Hillary Clinton thinks gun owners are terrorists So we got a lot of other stuff on the agenda. If you would like to join today's conversation, you can do so in a variety of ways. You can do, as we have been doing for the majority of the show here, get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. Again, that is at OnTheMoveShow on Twitter or twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can get us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, or you can just give us a call. The number of the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. All right, we'll be right back after this break, gang. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
We're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us to the break. So let's go ahead and get down to the nitty-gritty here. I want to talk about Bernie Sanders supporters. Where do they stand? What do they think? What's going on in that little noggin of theirs? I'm curious because, first of all, I think just a generalization here. I think a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters fit into my 3E category. If you're not familiar with my theory here of your average socialist, progressive, Democrat, these Marxists who are all about redistribution of wealth and bigger government, they fall into the 3E category. They're either empathetic, they're evil, or, oh shucks, I forgot my third E. What was that? I don't remember. I'm gonna have to think about that some more. But either way, excuse me. The empathy is a big deal when it comes to that. So they feel empathetic for somebody. They want to help them out. Some of these are just bleeding heart. They say bleeding heart liberals. Again, I hate using the term liberal to describe a socialist or a Marxist because they are not, in fact, liberal. They are the antithesis of the word liberal. They are anti-liberal in every way because they want to pass laws to restrict your freedom. That's the exact opposite of the definition of liberal. So, but I digress. And then you have the people who are evil. And I think those people are the ones who are playing this Game of Thrones. Those are the ones that really... Basically, it's about power, and it's about manipulating people to get their way, to get the power that they want. So, I happen to believe that most of the Bernie Sanders supporters are these uninformed, bleeding hearts, and I think the evidence is pretty stark in my favor here. So let's go ahead and listen to. There was an interview done. I think this is somebody from InfoWars or something that was outside of a Bernie Sanders event, and he found these Bernie Sanders supporters, and he was talking to them and asking them on issues and actually, showing what they believe. So anyway, here's a clip.
Just geographically.
All right. So we're over at the Milwaukee Theater, and I found these young young Bernie protesters or Bernie supporters out here, and they're looking for the Bernie rally. So first, I'm going to interview them. Why do you like Bernie?
Because he stands for everything that's right. He has so much integrity. He's been fighting for the same stuff since for 30 years. He's a politician that cares.
Yeah, that's when I think he got his first job 30 years ago. What about you?
I like how he's honest and he doesn't lie like all the other politicians, and he appeals more to like everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of
why you really like Bernie,
and no, he's gonna.
Oh.
All right, so she has a marijuana picture. It's like supporting legalization of marijuana. So that's apparently pretty important to her. You know, this is the thing. I think that most people generally are libertarians, and they just don't even know it yet. You know, I think if you explain to them on these policies, even the policies that you're going to hear them talking about a little later. First of all, libertarians, they think that marijuana should be legalized. So I don't understand why you would go to support a guy who's a much bigger government guy, huge government guy, giving the government more control. And by the way, I remembered the 3 E's now. It's empathy, entitlement, and evil. So they're either sad, bleeding heart liberals, very empathetic to the strife of other people, and they want to use the government to ease the stresses on people's lives. All right, want to use the government to make people's lives better. Then you have the entitled, those who think that they are entitled to the labor of other people. They're entitled to their welfare check. They're entitled to their food stamps. They're entitled to all these other government entitlements, and they think that somebody owes them something, even though that they didn't earn anything. They just feel entitled to it. And then you have the evil. You have the people who are using these two groups of people, the entitled class and the empathetic class. You have the evil who are using these people to manipulate the power and gain power. Because, by the way, if you haven't watched the show House of Cards, I'm a big fan. I've actually just recently started the show, but one of the things that really stuck with me was the main character. He was talking about how one guy, he was a lobbyist, I think, and he was saying that this guy chose money over power, and that's a fool's mistake, according to this character, who's like a dirty politician, doing the backroom deals and all that stuff. I think his name's Frank Underwood. So Frank, he says it's the biggest mistake you can have, because power is the ultimate. You should, in his mind, power does mean money, but power is everlasting in his opinion. Power will last through generations. If you're setting up a political dynasty, like for example Hillary Clinton has established this dynasty. In the Clintons, the name, the brand, it's going to be around. We're going to see it over and over. We'll see Chelsea Clinton probably one day running for president. If Hillary doesn't win this time, I think this will be the last chance that she's going to have to run. So I think after that, we're going to see Hillary Clinton, and don't be surprised. I'm predicting it right now. You will see more from the Obamas. I guarantee it. You're either going to see Michelle start running as a senator somewhere, and then maybe work her way up to a presidential bid. But this is the power that Frank Underwood from House of Cards is talking about. You are setting up a dynasty, and that's what some of these politicians are doing. They're utilizing the empathetic and the entitled and bending them to their will and establishing a political power dynasty. So anyway, back to the Bernie Sanders supporters. Here we go.
Hey, I'm a libertarian. I'm all for the legalization of drugs, especially because our government currently ships them in.
Yeah.
So what about you?
I'm pretty much for just about everything Bernie stands for, everything from his environmental issues like against fracking and wanting to take down Monsanto and all the big businesses and breaking up the big banks and just getting America back on track and building a strong infrastructure.
A strong infrastructure, everyone. We need to have strong infrastructures all around the country. All right, I won't nitpick. Here we go.
How do you think he's going to pay for all this?
I think he's going to pay for it with properly allocating our taxes, which currently go to 1%, and which currently a huge portion I know goes to the defense fund.
Oh, okay. All right. So she's a little bit misinformed, a little bit confused, especially if we look at the per capita, or I'm sorry, the Yeah, the rate per capita of other countries. So if we look at how much the United States spends per how much every other country spends, and if we look at our GDP ratio, we actually spend less of a percentage than some other countries as far as how much money we make. Our GDP, that's our national income. We actually spend less of a percentage of our GDP than other countries around the world. And again, this is the bleeding heart liberal philosophy of, and again, this is why we're seeing Russian aggression, why we saw a power vacuum created in the Middle East when Obama decided to just pull up stakes in Iraq and create the power vacuum. They tried to fight through proxies. They're arming ISIS. They've created, funded, and armed ISIS, and they are responsible. That their feckless policies, these foreign policies of where we don't ever have to actually fight anyone. We'll arm up everyone else. By the way, they're arming up jihadis all over the world, while these same people are calling for massive gun control in America. So they're arming enemies of America while saying that we want to disarm American citizens. It's no different than what happened in San Bernardino, the California shooting, where terrorists came here, shot American citizens, and then the liberals, again, leftist, statist, really is what they're called for gun control on American citizens. We were just attacked by a foreign enemy, and you're trying to tell us that we need to take away our guns so that we can we cannot defend ourselves, because guns in America are the problem. It has nothing to do with the ideology that wants to kill us, jihadism. It has nothing to do with that, right? It's about the gun. No. So she's saying all of this money, this Bernie supporter is saying all of this money is being misallocated. It's just misallocated. It's going to the wrong place. This is the argument that leftists make, by the way, that, socialism, yeah, it didn't work in the past. Yeah, it ended terribly. Yeah, millions of people are dead as a result of socialism. Yeah, big deal. Look, the point is, it hasn't been done right. They misallocated funds before. They did it wrong. This socialist, that guy, he'll do it right because, I don't know, whatever. It's no substance behind it. And again, it's a lot of hopeful wishes, rainbows and unicorns over here on this side. So, first of all, the government is inefficient. So there's always going to be fraud, waste, and abuse. There's always going to be, problems with the government. Anytime the government takes over something, it's going to run it less effectively than the natural market forces would, depending on what we're talking about. If we're talking about industry, free markets, those forces, the forces of supply and demand, those market forces that are controlled through natural interactions of individuals in a market, they actually control that market much more effectively. Now, granted, they aren't perfect, and markets can make mistakes. Free markets can make mistakes, but it's like swimming, okay, in the ocean. You're supposed to swim with the tide, or with the current. You don't want to wear yourself out fighting the current. You get caught in a riptide or something. You don't want to wear yourself out. And that's what the government does. Anytime the government is involved, they continually fight the free market forces, fight the natural forces that are there, and try to go against the current. And what happens is they do it less effectively than the free market does. Now, granted, the free market, it can have its stumbles and falls. It can have all sorts of problems as well. But historically speaking, the data is extremely clear. Free markets work better. They create jobs. They start businesses, which in turn actually creates more jobs. They lower the tax burden. If you have, for example, Ted Cruz talking about a flat tax. If you had a flat tax, if you have a predictable tax environment, the companies that are currently there, currently here in America, will expand their business if you lower their tax burden. And in fact, we talk about the Laffer curve all the time here. The Laffer curve is if you're taxing way too much money, you actually get less tax money back. That you get less taxes overall, because people realize, oh, you know what? I can just jump in this cart and have somebody else do the work for me. They can become part of the entitled class, or they realize, you know what? I'm just not going to pay my taxes, or they decide that they're going to make money under the table, and they do things in a black market. They operate in a black market to where they're not paying taxes. So this is what the Laffer curve is, and why small government and I'm trying to think of the word here. Small government and a predictable tax revenue income of what is going to be charged to you, and having it be, we talk about fair. What is the fair share? I think the only thing that could be fair is if everybody had skin in the game. If everybody, no matter what you made, if you're getting charged, as I think Ted Cruz wants a 10% flat tax. That will do so much to stimulate the economy. It's just ridiculous to even argue, because anybody who's a business owner right now, if you're paying upwards of 50% of your income, depending on your city, state, if you're paying 50% of your income, and that's suddenly scraped right off the top of now, and it's 10% flat tax to the government. How many more employees can you afford to hire now? How much more business can you afford to do? How many more risks can you afford to take? This is what I'm talking about. This is why I'm for Ted Cruz as far as being willing to vote for him, because I agree with a lot of his values. And one value in particular is that government, when they do something, they do it poorly. They do it ineptly. And they're always going to do it worse than the natural forces would do themselves. So this Bernie supporter saying that, the real problem, how we're going to pay for all of this, all of these social programs, free college, free health care, free everything, all of this stuff is going to be paid for by fixing fraud, waste, and abuse. It's just not the case. You're not going to fix it with fraud, waste, and abuse because, as you've seen, corporations are leaving America. We've talked about the layoffs that are happening. We have an environment right now, a political and industrial environment right now where you can't make things in America. You can't manufacture here. We are limiting ourselves. We are making ourselves uncompetitive against everyone else in the country. And in order to provide for these kind of social entitlement programs that Bernie Sanders and his supporters want, you have to tax the middle class. You have to. Mathematically speaking, we've run the numbers before on this show, and the numbers don't lie, folks. The amount of people that will have to be taxed far exceeds the 1%. And we already know that socialism breeds cronyism. The bigger the government is, the bigger the power that the government has to influence the free market, the more likely that there will be a collusion between big government and big business. And that's what we have. That's what we see. So that will continue, and we'll have more than what we have now of tax code. We have 70,000 pages of tax codes, most of which is providing loopholes for industries and whoever's getting a special favor, a subsidy, all of this crap. You're going to get more of this. And when you increase the taxes to pay for all this free college, free healthcare, all that stuff, the 1%, they're not going to pay that. Again, these tax loopholes that are carved out for these guys make it so that they don't have to pay a lot of the income. In fact, if you look at companies like GE, you look at Facebook, they get subsidies, they get tax breaks, they get all of this crap that they ought not get. Because if they, in a free market, if their business, if their idea, if what their service are good, if whatever they're providing was good and people wanted it, there would not be a need for subsidies. And this is the problem. This is where we stand. So I agree with the Bernie Sanders supporters that the 1% ought to pay their fair share. I agree. The only thing I disagree on is what fair means. Fair to me does not mean 90% of their income. Fair to me does not mean that someone dictates how much money that they can take home overall. Like if they're a millionaire and let's say they make $1 million a year. It's not fair, I think, for the government to step in and say, you should be happy with $100,000 take home. You should be happy with that. That's not fair because no one else, especially these liberals, I got to stop saying that, these socialists, these Marxists, they think that it's okay to tax people at that ridiculous amount because there's simply a 1%. And again, I think that is the empathy and the entitled. That there are people that are just simply jealous. They have, and that's what it was. It was the third E was not entitled actually, but this may turn into a 4E. The envious. That's what it was. I remember now. So yeah, we're turning that into a 4E: empathy, entitlement, envy, and evil. The 4 E's. I like that better. So. And then you have these socialists who are envious of other people's success, and they feel like they want to take them down. And it's like that German phrase, "Shut Schadenfreude or something like that. I'm probably horrible at that. I'm probably destroying it. But you get the drift. It's joy at seeing other people suffering or pain or failure or something along those lines. So this is what we have going on, and there's no way that, just mathematically speaking, no way that you can increase taxes on just the 1% to pay for all of this stuff. And what's more likely to happen is that the 1% just will not pay the taxes. They'll find more loopholes. They'll do more cronyism, and more of this burden will fall to the lower and middle classes, and most likely the middle class. The middle class is going to get destroyed by these programs. But I digress. I've been talking way too long. Let's listen to more Bernie Sanders supporters.
He's talked about attacks on Wall Street, on speculation.
Okay.
Amongst other things.
All right. Well, let me tell you, down that way is the Trump rally.
Oh, definitely don't want to walk in there.
You want to go in the Trump rally?
That would be awkward.
Well, why do you not like Trump?
Oh my gosh! Like, how much time do you have?
I got all the time in the world.
So this cracks me up. the woman says, "How much time you have?" She was basically not wanting to really get into specific details. He's got all the time in the world. This, to me, is giving Bernie Sanders supporters enough rope to hang themselves. Just let them. I gotta go up to Louisville. I have to. If anybody is in Kentucky, by the way, if anybody out there, an audience member, is in Kentucky and would like to go up to Louisville with me one of these days, I'm gonna go up there and just talk to these crazy nut job leftists and hear what they have to say. I want to ask some questions. Where do you stand on this? Or, what do you think? What's your guy? What policies do you like? I want to hear what they have to say, because I used to do these man on the street videos all the time, and I really enjoy doing that. But now that I've moved, I don't know anybody who can help me. I need a cameraman. I need somebody who can also have my back in case somebody wants to go fisticuffs with me, go mano a mano. Haven't had that happen yet, but I've heard Dan Sandini, by the way, who's been talking to us on Twitter throughout the show. A good friend of mine. I really like the guy. He's, we disagree on Trump, but hey, nobody's perfect, right? So, but him and he had some issues up in Portland. People hitting him and spitting on him. I think there was one of those instances. Laughing at liberals. If you haven't checked him out, we had him on the show before. He's on YouTube.com/laughing-at-liberals. He's been accosted by a leftist. Actually, the guy pushed him down and I think broke his arm. Very, very crazy, how you could be attacked out there. So it's good if you're going to go out and make videos like that, you need a wingman. But here's more from the Bernie Sanders support. She's getting the rope to hang herself now. Here she goes.
I would say most recently, his issues on abortion, I think, are just horrifying. Punishing women for, I just saw a really funny cartoon today that said, if my vagina shot bullets, would you want to regulate it? And, yeah.
Oh, your vagina shooting bullets. No, I don't want to regulate your vagina. In fact, I don't care to regulate your vagina. But if your vagina is housing a human being, then maybe we should discuss at what point it's okay to terminate a life. I mean, at what point is that alive? And, Hillary Clinton, she's all for killing the baby. I mean, maybe 28 days after you have it, who knows? At what point is it okay to kill this baby? Where I stand is I happen to think that governments were created to protect life, liberty, and property. So this is at least a conversation that we as a society need to have. The majority of Americans disagree with having an abortion in the third trimester. I happen to be one of them. I happen to think that if the baby can survive outside of the womb, it's alive, and it ought not be killed. And I also realize that as science advances, that we're going to decrease the window of where it's okay to abort a baby, because at some point, we're going to be able to keep them alive sooner and sooner in the pregnancy outside of the body. And I acknowledge that that's an arbitrary number, but I happen to think that we should err on the side of life. If somebody got pregnant and they want to, take one of the morning after pills. Look, I'm not gonna stand in their way. All right, but if we have a viable baby, a baby that can stay alive outside the womb, I just think that we should err on the side of life, and I think it's a dangerous policy to lessen the value of life. Period. which is why I'm not for doctor-assisted suicides. I don't think that should happen. Now, so I know a lot of libertarians out there are going to disagree with me on that, and that's fine. You're entitled to that. I just don't think that we should be like condoning somebody, because really this is someone else killing someone else, and yeah, it's doctor-assisted suicide, but. Obviously, I don't think suicide should be illegal, but it ought to be illegal for another person to kill another person. That's my opinion. I err on the side of life. I don't like the idea of lessening the value of a human being's life. And if some human wants to kill themselves, you can't stop them, whether or not they want to do it with a gun or whatever other method. Which is why I disagree with them lumping the statistics of suicides in with the gun violence deaths. I'm using air quotes here, because suicide account for 3/5 of the data that they have there. But anyway, you can't stop somebody from killing themselves. I just don't think we should condone it. And if she's talking about punishing women. Look, if it's against the law to kill a human being, if that's what we're saying is happening as a society, if we pass anti-abortion laws, if we say, having an abortion after the third trimester, just for example, if having an abortion after the third trimester is illegal, then what we're saying is that's murder. And if a woman is in the process of killing another human being, even if that human being is currently housed inside her vagina, then that's still murder. Just like, especially if they're hiring a doctor to do it, I don't think that there ought to be abortions that are sanctioned past a certain point. Now we can debate that point, and I know a lot of pro-lifers out there would say, Mac, I think. Life begins at conception. Well, I'm happy to have that debate with you. I tend to lean pro-life. I don't like abortion. I don't like the idea that babies are being killed out of convenience. We've got over 50 million children that have ceased to exist now. They who knows how many people. This is why I'm pro-life, by the way, is because humans are freaking awesome. We are amazing. Our greatest resource in this country and in the world are people. The more people that are alive, the better. This anti-people philosophy that a lot of the leftists have, by the way, it startling. Anti-people, anti-humanistic. They think that the population is too big. They think that there's too many people in the world. When in fact, if you put people shoulder to shoulder, the world's population shoulder to shoulder, they can fit into the island of Maui. So, now, granted, that's pretty crowded, but we still, this is a big freaking world. We got a lot of resources available, and our greatest one is human beings. By allowing 50 million people to not be born, how many geniuses out there have died? How many scholars have died? How many amazing doctors have died? People who could have potentially found the cure for incurable diseases. How many modern inventions would have been invented if these people had lived? People are worth preserving. Human beings are worth preserving. Now, if we're going to argue about where life begins, I'm happy to have that argument. But I think that we should err on the side of liberty, on the side of life, and try to protect life. That's just my opinion. I'm happy to hear what you guys have to say on it, though. But she's again, this Bernie Sanders supporter talking about would I want to regulate her vagina if bullets came out of it? It's kind of gross. It's a gross imagery. But look, I don't want to regulate bullets at all. I don't want to regulate guns. So again, I'm not a Donald Trump supporter, so I digress. Anyway, she continues.
I just think he's a really narcissistic.
What's up?
I think
he knows what's up.
A really unintelligent, narcissistic individual who has absolutely no clue how to run the country.
You don't think so?
I really don't.
All right, what about you?
So, looks like a Donald Trump supporter has walked by as this guy is interviewing. Anyway, he's switching to the next girl now. Here she is.
I think he's creepy, and I don't like.
This is the pot smoking girl. All right, so for the first girl that we heard over there, the one that we just heard, is as Dan Sandini of the Daily Disinfected. I like to plug Dan all the time here. He said that she's a Rosie O'Donnell lookalike with a bullet shooting bullet shooting walk-in vagina. Oh my God. Anyway, so she's misinformed on the policy. I think she's probably the empathetic and maybe even the envious category. And this girl is just uninformed. She has no information. The next girl here, first of all, she can't vote. We find out later in this interview that she can't vote due to some probably legal issue, or maybe she's not old enough. This is the pot smoker. This is a girl who supports marijuana. So she's more of how she feels kind of thing. She doesn't like him. So anyway, let's listen to her again.
Around the country.
You don't think so?
I really don't.
All right, what about you?
I think he's creepy, and I don't like watching him, and I don't like everything he says. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
And he lies a lot, so.
Wow. All right.
Okay, so he's creepy, he doesn't make any sense, and he lies a lot. So where's she getting that information? She doesn't get into details, but this is a Bernie Sanders supporter. Now here's the third girl. Let's hear what she has to say.
He's just such a racist. He's a mean bully, and we live in America, which is founded on immigration and people coming and giving all their talents. The things he says about Mexico, the things he says about Muslims, it just is infuriating. It's not right.
He says Muslims.
Okay, so she thinks he's a racist. This narrative, although it may not be true, I don't know. I don't know what's in Donald Trump's heart. I don't know. I know there are some stories about how he did not want to have African American employees on the floor when he came there at one of his casinos. There's alleged stories. That's alleged. I don't know how true that is. It could be complete bullcrap, and it might be. I happen to think that this guy is probably not a racist. I think Donald Trump is all about. He's a Trumpist. He's all about himself. That's where I look at it. I think he just is about himself. Whatever's best for him, that's whatever position he's going to take. He's going to play the game. He's going to use the rules to his advantage. These are things that he said. This is his MO. But this is what Bernie Sanders supporters think about Donald Trump. You got the Rosie O'Donnell lookalike that was just completely misinformed about policy and the way the government works. Then you've got the uninformed girl in the middle here. She's once that marijuana legalized, she should be voting Libertarian. And you've got the other girl who just thinks that he's a mean old bully and a racist.
Muslim's a corrupt country. You don't think it's corrupt?
I think it's the generalization to say that all of them are.
I don't think he's saying all of them are. He's saying the government is.
No.
He's talking about Muslims here. She was saying his opinion on Muslims is infuriating, and he's talking about the Trump's position on Muslim countries. So, anyway, I'll just play it. Let you hear it.
He's saying we're trying to send them all back, put them on a boat. Like that's awful.
Mm-hmm. You really think he's going to do that? Deport everybody?
If he was president, I don't know where he would stop. I think he believes in everything he's saying, which is terrifying.
All right. Well, I'm going to tell you where the Bernie rally is. Walk straight that way. No, I'm serious. Walk straight that way. Yeah, it is. They were just letting people in over there. I just talked to a cop earlier.
I don't believe him. So here comes the Trump supporter.
All right, fine. Go that way. See what you can find over there.
Oh, just right this door right here.
I don't think this is the Bernie rally. They were lining up over here.
Well, maybe they're leaving. Yeah. Are you guys here for the Bernie rally?
Yeah, it's there.
And he's right. He showed him where it is. So the friendly Libertarian helping out the lost Bernie Sanders supporters. They're getting their education from this guy, and I think they're getting embarrassed. They're embarrassing themselves on YouTube. So now in the video, what happens is somebody who recognizes this fella from InfoWars. He gets recognized, and he just so happens to be a Donald Trump supporter. You may be familiar. Donald Trump has decided to support. Alex Jones, has decided to support Donald Trump. So all his viewers, or a lot of his viewers, I don't want to generalize here. A lot of his viewers are on the Trump train. So this guy, he sees the InfoWars dude, and they start talking to him. It's coming up here in the video.
InfoWars is right again. All right, hey, just to let you know. If he gets in office, all of our taxes are going to go up. So be prepared. But I don't think he's going to. I think they're going to steal it for Hillary. How do you feel about the Democratic Party stealing the nomination for Hillary Clinton?
I really hope that doesn't happen, but I wouldn't be too pleased about it. I think if that happens, it's going to be really unfortunate because there's a lot of really passionate Bernie supporters that are not going to vote for Hillary, and it's just going to divide the vote, and Trump's going to be our president.
In fact, 33% said they would not vote for Hillary. It was in the Huffington Post just the other day.
All right, so this is a point that I'd actually like to focus on for 1 second here. 33% won't vote for Hillary, the Bernie Sanders supporters. So this is going to be one of the lowest turnout elections we've ever seen, which is why I think there's a real shot at a Libertarian Party candidate getting the nomination. Getting the in the general and actually potentially putting up a good fight. I hope, in my heart of hearts, I really hope that a Libertarian candidate would be able to win. I think they could if we had the disenfranchised Bernie supporters who support, by the way, the moral arguments that Bernie's making. He's making these things that it's immoral for us to do this, that, and the other. And this is an ideas campaign coming from the Bernie side. So if we can convince the Bernie supporters that our ideas are better, we can explain to them why our ideas are more moral as libertarians or conservatives. And if there's a Donald Trump who's got the GOP nomination, he's disenfranchised the conservative base. Conservatives are looking for a new home. Maybe they'll all go over to the Libertarian Party. Maybe they won't. I hope so. I will encourage, if that's our choice, Hillary or Donald Trump, I'll encourage everyone to go third party with me because that's where I'll be going. Unless there's somebody going up there that does not represent my values, even then I may not be able to vote. And I'll tell you, I'm not gonna vote for a progressive. It will not happen. I'm not voting for social justice warriors. I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to vote for somebody who wants to use a coercive force of government against people who aren't hurting anyone and they're not stealing anything from anyone else. This is my whole philosophy. Don't hurt people. Don't steal their crap. That's it. It's simple. It's the non-aggression principle. So I can't, in good conscience, vote for somebody that violates that. That somebody that wants to expand the size of government. I just can't. I won't. And I'm not going to do that. So I think a lot of people are in the same boat as me. I think that the conservatives may start looking at a Libertarian candidate, and maybe the Bernie Sanders will somehow wander into the Libertarian Party. I think that would be they're lost in this instance. They're lost ideologically, I think, as well. So maybe if they feel disenfranchised from Hillary Clinton, maybe they will look elsewhere. And it would be amazing to me to see a socialist uprising in the Democrat Party, and then somehow they go Libertarian. I think it's a long shot. I really think it's a long shot, but I think there's a better shot of that than them going for Donald Trump. And as I've said, there's absolutely no chance that Bernie supporters are going to, in numbers, convert to Donald Trump. No way. So you have these disenfranchised Bernie supporters. You have the disenfranchised conservatives and Republicans who, identify themselves as Republican, but they stick to values. Maybe they don't call themselves conservative, but there's a large chunk there. And obviously you've got the Libertarian Party itself that already has, a lot of people who support the Libertarian Party also. So it's the largest third party movement out there. So I would really love to see that happen. I mean, we'll see. What do you guys think? Give me on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. Let me know what you think. Or give us a call, 360-450-5625, 360-450-5625. What do you think is going to happen? We got the contestant convention possibly coming. Who's going to get the nomination? What do you think is going to happen on the Democratic Party? Where are these people going to go? What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear it. Give us a call. Number to show is 360-450-5625. All right, so let's go ahead and continue the clip.
Well, what about you? Are you going to vote for Hillary if Bernie doesn't get nominated?
I can't vote.
I don't want to think about that. I don't feel good about casting my vote for Hillary or Trump.
All right. Look at that guy.
You know what time it is?
What time is it?
Liberty time.
Who are you voting for?
I'm voting for Trump.
All right.
You know it.
Tell these ladies why you're voting for Trump.
I'm voting for a man that's going to secure borders. I mean, we got to have a nation. If we don't have a nation, we don't have a country.
If we don't have a nation, we don't have a country. So, look, honestly, Donald Trump supporters out there, this is not a fair representation of all of you, admittedly. but I think there is a lot of Donald Trump supporters out there who are similar to this guy. Based on my experience talking to a lot of them. Now, not all of them do. Not all of them are like this, but I think this is a decent representation of some Donald Trump supporters. Here we go.
And if we don't have a country, it won't exist. America's the only place where you can make dreams come true. All right, no other place, if they put you in a system like that, you're done. And so this is our option. This is the only option. And that's why I'm voting for them. InfoWars.
All right, you guys obviously don't like to hear that. I can tell. Or are you being triggered right now?
Maybe a little.
Yeah, well, now check this out. It's like this. If you get into a system, right, under socialism, right, they're the kingmakers, and you ain't going to get ahead because they control it. Remember, like that. Or do
other countries like where they have single-payer health care for their whole country, and where they pay for kids to go to college, and they pay less taxes than we do, and they get all these benefits that we don't get.
Hey, I'm on the same page with that. But we can fix it. That's why we're voting for Trump.
Look, man, the fact is that he's not helping. He's not. We can fix it because we're voting for Trump. How are you going to fix it? First of all, what are you going to do? Donald Trump supporters, by the way, I don't know how you all feel about universal health care. I'm absolutely against it. I think it's slavery. In and of itself, it is slavery because you're forcing people to work for free, essentially. And basically, with if you're talking about, like, for example, doctors, okay? Doctors are entitled to their time, all right? At no point should a doctor be forced to charge less for a good or a service, depending on what they're doing. And you're not entitled to that good or service anyway. You're entitled to not be discriminated against, I guess, in this culture, in this society. But I think that they should be able to deny service to you for any reason, including if you don't have the money to pay for it. And one of the great things about free market stuff, if you're talking about healthcare, one of the reasons why, and I want to address this stuff that the Bernie Sanders supporter brought up, because she's saying, that all these countries overseas, they don't pay as much in taxes as us. This is just, first of all, that's just not true. And second of all, these socialist countries, like, by the way, Switzerland, they're moving towards the free market. They're realizing the utter failure of their socialistic policies, and even what's happening in Germany with their open border policies. Angela Merkel, whatever you say her first name, she's now starting to backtrack on her open border policies because these Marxist, socialist, open border, big welfare state, all of these things, they just don't work. They don't work. And these European countries are actually starting to move away from these systems. So it's just simply not true. And secondly, what Bernie Sanders is suggesting to make all of these things so free is that we're going to have to work more for other people out of the year. There's going to be more months, more days, more weeks out of the year that you're going to have to work for somebody else. And as a doctor, I think a doctor should be entitled to work for what they're willing to work for. The government shouldn't step in and say, no, you have to charge this amount of money, blah, 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 or they subsidize or all this other. All of this crap is why healthcare costs more money, all right? Government intervention. You've seen what happened with Obamacare. As soon as Obamacare passed, healthcare rates doubled and tripled. There's people losing their healthcare coverage all over the country because they can't afford it. And then the worst thing about that is that they're getting taxed or penalized, however you want to look at it, depending on the Supreme Court interpretation. They're getting taxed because now they can't afford to have healthcare coverage. So they lose their coverage because they can't afford it, and then they now are taxed or penalized. Or as Obama said, if you like your health care, you can keep your health care. You like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. It's just not true. Some of these people got dropped. So it's a little bit ridiculous. So this is a Donald Trump supporter who cannot tell you, cannot make the argument, can't articulate his opposing points to the Bernie Sanders supporter. He says, I'm with you, but we can fix it because of Donald Trump. That's why we vote for Donald Trump.
We can fix all that. Everything can be fixed. The thing is, you got to try. And if you do nothing will happen.
See, that right there, I think that's a progressive argument. You got to try, because if you try, you'll do something. Something good will happen when you try. It doesn't help you to not try. Look, progressives are trying. They're trying. They're just trying all the wrong things. They're trying to swim, upriver. They're trying to go against the flow, the current. We have to stop trying so damn much, in my opinion. Stop putting the government between people and choices. Do you want to be? I keep going back to this simple point. This is the easiest way I can identify my philosophy and explain it to people who may not necessarily be as in touch with politics, as connected with it as I am. And look, I'm not a big brain. I'm not anything special. So I'm not trying to say that my opinion is above all, because it's not. I'm wrong all the time. I'm wrong 5 times on my way out the door. It's human nature to be wrong. But I pay attention and I follow this stuff, and I boil my philosophy down here is, do you want to be more free or less free? That's what it is. Government is force. That's all it is. Anytime a law is passed, it means that the government can then use force against someone. So let's look at, for example, a victimless crime, and let's look at something that's been recently in the news. Obama's talking about mandatory voting. This is one of his new things that he's been on, talking about mandatory voting. First of all, I think that'd be detrimental, because obviously the more uninformed a voter is, the more likely they are to vote for a Democrat, because they want that free crap. Let me get that free crap, yo. Look, that I think is scary enough to have people who are forced to vote, who don't care or don't follow politics, who don't understand the issues or the people that they're voting for, can't name a single policy that their candidate or the guy they voted for stands for. That's one of the things I have an issue with mandatory voting. I think that would be first of all, it would destroy the Republican Party. There wouldn't be much chance at that point, because I think a lot of uninformed voters would vote Democrat, honestly. But secondly, and more importantly, I think is the coercive force behind mandates, forcing people to vote. Voting is a positive right that the government has to provide for you, but it's not a right that you have to assert, just like all your rights. I would not support, and this is a great point here. I would not support a mandate that everyone is armed. I wouldn't support a mandate that says every single person has to open carry a gun everywhere they go. I wouldn't support that, because rights don't have to be asserted. You can choose not to assert them, and I disagree with using force against people. So this ultimately, you should ask one question when it comes to mandated voting: what are you going to do if I don't vote? And you got to say it all challenging like that. Well, what are you going to do if I don't vote? All right. So seriously, what are they going to do? Are they going to use force against you? Do you think, as a person who may support mandated voting, do you think that somebody ought to be killed because they decided that they didn't want to vote, and they resisted anyone who tried to force them to vote? Maybe they had a fundamental issue with the institutionalization of the human psyche. Anyway, maybe they have that issue, and maybe they're just rebelling for whatever reason. Maybe they disagree with voting in and of itself. I happen to have a lot of friends that don't vote because they think it's unfair. They think the system's rigged. They disagree with the Electoral College, whatever. But I happen to have a lot of friends who don't vote, and I disagree fundamentally with forcing people to do things against their will. So this, I think, is the ultimate question that needs to be asked: do you want to be free, or do you want more free or less free? And socialist programs, mandates, things along those lines, things that try to redistribute wealth from one person and give it to another, that is the antithesis of freedom. That is theft. That is coercion. That is force, and we should do everything in our power to limit how much control the government has, how much power it has to levy force against another human being. So, anyway, we're going to cut to a commercial break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the main topic of today's show, the Game of Thrones, and in honor of the fact that the Game of Thrones is coming back on tonight, and I'll be watching that after this show. Pretty excited. So anyway, we're going to talk about the Game of Thrones. I have a clip that I want to play, and I think you guys are going to like this. So you guys aren't going to want to miss this, what's coming up. So I'm pretty excited to talk about it. If you have anything you'd like to bring to the table, you have a conversation you want to bring up, give me a call, 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Or you can get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. You can get us on Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. And we'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. We got a half hour left in the program. I'm sure happy you guys have stuck with us here. So let's get into the main topic here. The Game of Thrones. That has always been played. Power, the greed that people have, the lust that people have for power, and how they try to manipulate that power to force people to bend to their will. I have a excellent video that I would like to play for you guys. This is from one of my favorite YouTube channels, Learn Liberty. You can check them out at learnliberty.org. They got amazing classes that you can take on there. There's a lot of forefront liberty movement people talking about free markets and free minds. And I think it's one of the best websites on the interwebs. So check them out, learnliberty.org. Here's a clip that they had about the Game of Thrones, how it must be stopped. Here we go.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground.
I want to teach students to question the nature of power, to ask where it comes from and how it changes us. What makes Game of Thrones so brilliant is that as it depicts these bloody conflicts between rulers and would-be rulers, it hints that maybe none of them deserves to rule. In fact, maybe ruling is the whole problem. We don't need dragons and white walkers to explain why Westeros is such a mess. It's simpler than that. The rulers of Westeros create chaos and destruction because everyone agrees there should be rulers of Westeros. The very existence of the Iron Throne encourages people to kill for it and even die for it, to capture it at all costs. But securing the throne also means manipulating other people to do the killing and dying for you. The source of all power is concentrated in a giant chair that's open for the taking. And that makes it a target for anyone with a small pile of gold and a few swords. It's a recipe for never-ending conflict and misery, especially for the common people.
The common people pray for rain, health, and a summer that never ends. They don't care what games the High Lords play.
When the rulers fight, it's their subjects who suffer most. So how do we stop the bloodshed? In history, how did some societies go from times as violent and unstable as the imaginary Westeros to a period of relative peace, stability, and prosperity?
Power resides where men believe it resides. It's a trick, a shadow on the wall.
Even in Westeros, power resides where people believe it resides. When ordinary people start questioning arbitrary authority, the thrones on which the rulers sit are weakened. In our world, if we want to challenge power, we have to change our fundamental beliefs about it. What if our government had little power to begin with? What if political power didn't command such authority or offer so many rewards? Then there would be no Game of Thrones, because the throne wouldn't be a prize worth taking. The key is to build from the bottom up, not from the top down. In history, authoritarian regimes were undermined when people removed their consent. They promoted their own ideas about the society they wanted to flourish. Westeros will never see peace until the Iron Throne becomes little more than an uncomfortable chair. As for our world, we've learned that the only way to win the Game of Thrones is not to play.
So, I think there's a lot that can be taken from that. First of all, this is something that I've been hitting on for quite some time. And let's use the example that he gave, the Iron Throne. If you're not familiar, by the way, if you're not familiar with Game of Thrones, the Iron Throne basically is the throne that the king of several different kingdoms that have been unified underneath one kingdom has basically taken control. So whoever sits in the Iron Throne rules all of Westeros. And in the show, the series, there is a lot of infighting that is going on over who will then rule the Iron Throne when the king is killed. And basically, this is kind of the concept that I've been saying for a long time, and this actually I think fits into the money in politics conversation that we've had before, lobbyists and the like. All right, so if there was no Iron Throne, or in our case, there was no power, we're going to refer to governmental power and influence over the free market, or your daily life. If this power did not exist, then there would be no lobbyists. The only people that would be lobbying are people that were trying to advocate for policy, not for special favors. What we see now is the Iron Throne of our world, the seat of government, this power of government, is a target, just like the Iron Throne was. People try to get to this powerful position, try to get the power that they're seeking, and as of being there, and once they have the power, they are then subject to special interests and things along those lines. So the power in and of itself is the problem. The power that the government has to influence your life, to coerce you, to force you to do things against your will, that's the problem. If we're worried about corruption and cronyism and all of this other stuff, money in politics, the corrupting influence of money in politics, if we're really worried about that, then the way to answer that is not to try to fight the money from coming into politics. It's to remove the incentives for the money to be there in the first place. If companies didn't get anything, if there was nothing to be gained by lobbying the government because the government can't change anything, then we would see no money and no lobbyists. Simple, right? One of the things that was said in that clip that I think is particularly interesting is power resides where people think it resides. It's a trick. It's a shadow on the wall. I absolutely agree with that, because when you think about your country, or you think about power in general, who's powerful, why are they powerful? Really, it's because, unless we're talking about a military dictatorship, it's because people are backing that person. People have consented to that person's power, their political authority, and even in a dictatorship, they have to have some trigger pullers out there, people who are forcing other people against their will, and those people have to endorse the person's right to rule. They have to believe in the power that government or that individual has. It's all an illusion. what I would like to see is to see our country start to empower individuals, and as opposed to, and this is what I look for in everything, every policy that I think about, I try to focus on how it could be settled at the lowest level possible. When I was in the military, a lot of you may not know, I'm actually I used to be in the military, excuse me. So I'm a veteran. One of the things that we learned when we were in there is that you want to settle things at the conflicts at the lowest level possible. You don't want to skip your chain of command. And I look at that kind of philosophy in terms of how government should function. If it can be settled at all at the lowest level, at the individual level, it ought to be. The government is so inefficient, so inept, so corrupt, and the idea of using force against somebody is so immoral that it ought not be used unless there is absolutely no other resort. And especially if we're talking about going up the chain of levels of government. You know, if a state or a city wants to pass a law that I think is immoral and it forces other people to do things against their will, you know, as long as everything's on the up and up, constitutionally speaking, with their state and whatnot, and that's what the people want, okay. You know, I disagree with it, but you know, they have every right to govern their society how they see fit. Just like I have every right, if they decide to pass ridiculous laws, I can move. I can vote with my feet and move somewhere that fits my values. But it's a lot more difficult to do that if we start imposing force at a national level using the federal government. Again, I've talked about over and over again about this, the experiment of self-ownership, the experiment of self-governance that our founders were establishing with this nation, and the fact that each state was supposed to be their own little experiment in governing. You know, they could make mistakes, and if that state failed, they failed by their own self. You know, it wasn't one broad policy that failed across the nation. It was that one state. But when we start imposing, you know, federal regulation, federal laws, things along those lines, if that policy turns into a failed policy, then we fail across the board. We have a cataclysmic collapse, essentially, of a policy failure, as opposed to if it was just isolated at the state level. But I digress. So one of the things I want to talk about here is the idea that that leftists don't seem to get. And you know, I will say, to some degree, even some Donald Trump supporters. Again, no offense if you're a Donald Trump supporter, but if this doesn't apply to you, then don't worry about it. If it stings a little close to home, then maybe it does. But government is a bad force. It's just it's not good at anything it does, and more importantly, it's coercive. It uses coercive force. So one thing that Bernie supporters or big government supporters don't seem to understand is that, first of all, as the video said, as Game of Thrones says, if you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. And that, I think, is a particularly disturbing thought, is that people are fighting for this power, and ultimately this power is so coveted that people will die for it. People will kill for it. And we know that you know, it's a dangerous force to have that much power and control over other people's lives, over other people's property, their freedom. And we also know that people can be jerks, you know, and that includes, you know, racists, bigots, just jerks, people that are just jerks for no reason at all. So why would you want to create this giant apparatus of government that can literally kill people, when you know people can be jerks, and that power, that apparatus that you're building, it's basically a magnet for people who want to use this power to their advantage. Why would you want to do that? I think it's a bad idea, and I really want to encourage people to start looking at things at the individual level. How can individuals solve this issue? How can we as a society stop looking towards government as our solution and instead start realizing that government is most of our problems? Government force, government coercion, government manipulation of the free market, through subsidies or tax credits or whatever. Government is really the biggest source of our woes. And I think it's important that we look for ways to avoid bringing things into the government's purview, giving them special rights or privileges that they never had, giving them more responsibility. Because once they get that power, that responsibility, they never let it go. At least not without a fight. They again, what we see right now with Obamacare, you have the establishment Republicans talking about repealing and replacing, which, by the way, Donald Trump is talking about that as well. We're not going to get rid of Obamacare underneath Donald Trump. It'll just be rebranded to Trump Care. It'll be something different. It'd be repealed and replaced instead of just repealed and let the free market open up. Let people compete, let insurance companies compete again, across state lines. Get rid of all of these artificial stimuluses of the free market concerning healthcare. But instead, that's not what we're going to get, because even the Republicans, they don't care about the power itself. They don't think that it's the government shouldn't be involved in this. They just their problem is that it's controlled by the Democrats. That it's a Democrat program. It's that the Democrats are in charge of it. This is the issue. They don't mind the power. They want the power for themselves. Their issue is that it's a Democrat thing. So, but I digress. Let's go ahead and talk about something else. I think we focused on this enough here. So, and again, I hate the fact, because some people say that I talk about Donald Trump too much. All right, but Donald Trump is a progressive, and I am anti-progressive. So it's not that I'm really, really anti-Trump. It's that I'm anti all progressive policies, and Donald Trump is of my immediate concern because we're going into the general. If Donald Trump loses the nomination, I won't talk about him anymore. I promise you. If he's not the candidate, you won't hear another peep out of me about Donald Trump. But he is of my immediate concern because this is the election that we're in. So, but I digress. So, let's talk about. Let's see here. I have some other featured topics we're gonna get to. Let's go to Donald Trump thinks America is a democracy. Where's the clip on that? Here we go. Donald Trump says we're supposed to be a democracy.
So I watch Bernie. He wins. He keeps winning. And then I see he's got no chance. They always say he has no chance. Why doesn't he have a chance? Because the system is corrupt. And it's worse on the Republican side. Because I'm up millions of votes on Cruz. Millions. I don't mean like I'm up by 2 votes. I'm up millions and millions of votes. I'm up by hundreds and hundreds of delegates. I go to Louisiana. I win Louisiana, and I say, isn't that beautiful? I love the people. I send them a note. Thank you very much. I love you, Louisiana. Then I find out that I get less delegates than Cruz because of some nonsense going on. No, I'm telling you. And I say this to the RNC, and I say it to the Republican Party. You're going to have a big problem, folks, because there are people that don't like what's going on. They don't like what's going on. We've got a corrupt system. It's not right. We're supposed to be a democracy. We're supposed to be, you vote and the vote means something, all right? You vote and the vote means something.
So, we're not supposed to be a democracy, actually, Donald. This is one of those things that it's kind of my pet peeve. And, it may get lost in the minutiae out there of the difference between a republic and a democracy, but we are not a republic, and disregard. We are not a democracy, nor have we ever been a democracy. We are a republic. In the Constitution, it guarantees us a Republican form of government. And this is one of the concerns that I have here, is when did conservatives not support the idea of Republican forms of governance? All right. So, for example, the GOP, it's a private organization. It can govern itself however it wants. But the election, even in the general, is decided by delegates because there's a buffer between people, the popular vote, and the nominee. There's a buffer, and that's the delegates. And why is that there? I know a lot of my friends, they disagree with the Electoral College. They say it's unfair. It's not. I don't know. It's whatever excuse they have. I don't know. They just don't like it. All right. It's unfair. Basically, is the issue. But this is what our founders if we're talking about the Electoral College, this is what the founders put in as a hedge against the mob, against democracy, because they were terrified of democracy, as am I. I think that democracy sucks, in my opinion. Democracy is 50.1% of the population being able to force the other 49.9% of the population to do something against their will. That's what it is. Democracy is mob rule, and it's not that terrible in times of peace, but in times of crisis, this is where it is particularly bad. It's a particularly bad form of government. Bernie Sanders talks about democratic socialism. Okay, so you have the democratic side, democracy. So the people are choosing policies. You're looking more towards direct democracy. Is in many states around the country they have popular referendum, things like that, where people can vote. In Washington State, for example, where I used to live, they had citizens referendums, and you could put your own issue on the ballot. If you had petitions for it, you had enough signatures to get it on the ballot, people will vote for it, or they won't, whatever. But you get the gist. I'm not a fan of direct democracy. I don't like the idea of the masses being able to vote on an issue. I like Republican forms of government where we have people who are knowledgeable on issues being elected to represent us. That's what a republic is. That's what we have in this country. Now, granted, we've got a lot of democratic tendencies, but in times of crisis, democracies are terrible, because typically what will end up happening, and in fact, you know what? I had a great conversation with somebody who I disagree with almost entirely on democracy, and I'll go ahead and I'll read this conversation to you guys. So this guy, he's saying that he's all for democracy, and one of the things that he was saying was that he's not for anarcho-capitalism. He says, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. I think that there are a majority of failings in the argument. A collective decision would still have to be made, say, for a country to go to war against an aggressor. So direct democracy would be the best way for such a decision-making process. So simply because, like I said, 50.1% of the population thinks that we should go to war, we should go to war. This is his excuse. So, this conversation kind of got cut out because I must have typed too much and it said see more. Let me see if I can bring this conversation up here. Right there. I think I had it bookmarked because I wanted to talk to you guys about it. Yes, here we go. All right, so let's actually start at the beginning, because he was talking about his original post is, I believe direct democracy, as you've correctly pointed out to somebody who was talking about, we should all have a say. So basically, the will of the people argument. This is what you're hearing from Donald Trump, by the way. So I respond, let's see. Sorry, I'm losing my... this is great radio. You guys are loving this here. So he says, he was talking to somebody else. He says, well, James, you're partly correct, but a decision has to be made, whether it is a communist governance, Islamic governance, representative democracy, or direct democracy, and decision must be made, and someone will lose out. So I respond and say, Davey, that's the guy's name, that was the worst endorsement I've ever heard. Someone is going to lose out. Let's just let the mob decide. So he says, so who is going to decide? I say, Davey, how about individuals having control over their own destiny without undue influence of government? He says, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist, is where he was talking about. And he says, so direct democracy is the best way for such a decision-making process. I say, there is a difference between using minimal amount of coercion as possible and anarchy. War is a perfect example of why some government is necessary, but one of the few. Most other situations, it is best to allow natural forces such as supply and demand to steer steer the course because they do it better. Why use government when it is less efficient? Let me ask you, what's the difference between a mob using force against a minority and an individual using force against a minority? Mob rule is even worse than dictatorial rule because at least an individual will have an agenda, and policy usually works toward that end, whereas a mob can and will change on any given day. Democracy leads to schizophrenic policy and the tyranny of the majority. And Dave goes in. He says, "So Switzerland, who has schizophrenic policy and this is a typo. That can't be right. So Switzerland, who has schizophrenic policy, and I'm assuming he meant to say tyranny, but he said tranny, or does it give everyone a say on what happens in their country?" So I reply, say, Davey, I'm glad that you mentioned Switzerland because they're moving away from government controls over the free market. Additionally, even though the Swiss utilize direct democracy, they are still a representative democracy, and most of their laws are made by their parliament. What you are calling for is direct democracy, though. Therefore, Switzerland is not a proper example. He goes in again. He says he's from the United Kingdom, apparently. He says, "We are now in the UK going to have had to referendum, one for Scottish independence and one leaving the communist EU. Both have given us a direct say in what we want to do as a democracy. This is the settled will of the people. No one ever voted to be part of an EU." So I say, Davey, democracy produces tyranny in times of crisis, and I expect Europe is headed for quite a wild ride in the next few years thanks to their suicidal open border policies. If direct democracy is the primary tool that governments in Europe begin to use to make decisions, I expect the cost will be individual liberty as interest groups mobilize. He says, I think I think it empowers the individual over the politician, so I think it increases liberty. And this is we're wrapping up the conversation here. He says it empowers the individual. I disagree. I said, Davey, it's not correct. It empowers the collective above all, including the individual, which is antithetical to liberty because all liberty is based upon individual freedom. He says, I've said before, decisions have to be made at the state level. Better to have everyone involved than secret groups doing it in a representative democracy. And I don't believe in anarchist state. That's why I joined the Scottish Libertarian Party. So my final statement, and he didn't have anything else to say after this. I guess he was done talking to me. I say no one has to get screwed over if no one has authority to screw anyone over. You keep mentioning anarchy, but I am simply talking about limited government. So this is the Game of Thrones argument that I've been having over and over and over again. For if I agree, there's a lot of corruption in politics, but that corruption, it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the power that lures these evil people, these people who are power hungry and wanting the Frank Underwoods of the world, the ones out there that think that power is the ultimate thing that you should be fighting for, you should be reaching for. It's your ultimate goal. The power brokers, the Hillary Clintons of the world, the Barack Obamas of the world. He's not going to go away, gang. I can tell you this right now. Expect to see a lot more of Barack Obama after he's out of the White House than you probably want to see. So let's go ahead and end the show on a final note here. We got 5 minutes left in the program. Hillary Clinton, she was on a show that had panelists talking about how gun owners are terrorists and gun makers are making Americans terrorists. And she didn't say anything, but you're not going to be able to see this. This is a beautiful thing about radio is that you don't get to see the visual. But she was sitting back just nodding her head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this on our Facebook page, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, and you can check that out, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. I'll send it out on Twitter. You can check that out on there as well. It's going to be @OnTheMoveShow, and you can watch this yourself and see what she's doing when this woman is calling American citizens who are gun owners terrorists. Hillary Clinton is sitting back there nodding her head. Here's the clip.
Citizens are the terrorists, right? We're so worried about terrorism, but we have terrorism on our own soil. Our gun manufacturers, our ammunition manufacturers are making...
And she's slowly nodding her head up and down. She's just, yeah, you're hitting all the right points. So again, one more time.
Citizens are the terrorists, right? We're so worried about terrorism, but we have terrorism on our own soil. Our
citizens are the terrorists, right? I mean, am I right? The citizens, the citizens are terrorists, right? I mean, if you don't count 9/11, this is one of the things the left likes to do too. If they don't count 9/11, there's barely been any attacks. They're not counting the foiled attacks, the attacks that just didn't go right. But also, you're not counting the biggest terrorist attack in the United States history. But okay, all right, you're not going to count that. But yeah, this.
Citizens are the terrorists, right? We're so worried about terrorism, but we have terrorism on our own soil. Our gun manufacturers, our ammunition manufacturers are making terrorists out of our citizens. A sobering fact.
Yeah, what's a sobering fact is that a potential presidential candidate is nodding her head to gun owners are terrorists, gun makers are terrorists. All right, Dan on Twitter here at Daylight Dis, he's saying, at On the Move Show, we are a democratic republic. You are being deliberately obtuse. No, I'm not. If you look at what Benjamin Franklin was asked when he was asked what kind of government did you make for us, he didn't say a democratic republic, Dan. He said a republic if you can keep it. I am not being hypocritical. I'm stating exactly what we were told we had. And in fact, if you look at what it is, we do have a republic. We elect our representatives to make law for us. Now, we have some democratic tendencies, I'm not going to lie, when we institute things like direct democracy, which we see in states all over the country. But we are a republic. There's no debate on this subject. We're a republic. We were from the start, and we still currently are. We're moving further away from that, but that's what we are. Sorry. You don't like it? I'm sorry, Dan. Sorry. But anyway, we're out of time. I really, first of all, Dan, thank you so much for participating. I want to say a big shout out for our listeners out there, MagPack. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week. I really appreciate your continued support. Also, big thanks to Peter Owens for tuning in here, or for calling in and joining us on the program. I had a lot of fun talking to him. Hope you guys check him out. He runs the Common Sense Conservative podcast. Let me double check on what that's called. Yeah, the Common Sense Conservatism. So go check him out over there. I'd certainly appreciate it. And check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com, our Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow, Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow, YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And I certainly appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you so much. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.